Am I the asshole for publicly exposing my aunt and entitled cousin after they ruined my birthday and made it all about themselves? After my aunt and pampered cousin turned my birthday party into a humiliating event, I publicly exposed them. Karen, my aunt, is 41 years old. She has been married to my 43-year-old uncle for just over a year. Emily, Karen's 12-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. She never had a father figure growing up, so even though my uncle only entered her life when she was 9, he has always treated her like his own daughter. My uncle brought Karen and Emily to our family when their romance turned serious. They have attended the majority of get-togethers and family vacations ever then. Karen was always very demanding and would make others do what she wanted, which is why I never liked her. She didn't respect anyone, but that's another matter. For instance, she would consistently be late or absent at all for occasions. Even though she was informed that punctuality was crucial, I mean to say that she was 45 to an hour late. She never expressed regret over it. She also never accepted no for an answer and would constantly ask people to do things for her, such as go get something from the store or do whatever she didn't want to do. She has even stated on several occasions that she anticipates receiving princess-level treatment. My uncle appeared content with her, so even though my family thought she was rude and nasty, we didn't really voice our disapproval. Thus, we left it alone. But her daughter was the true issue. I will attempt to enumerate some of Emily's rude and entitled actions, but I cannot begin to explain them all. I was 20 years old and usually sat at the adults' table when Emily was first presented to us. She insisted that either she sit with the adults or I return to the children's table since she felt it was unfair that I was seated with them while she was not. She was 10 years old at the time, in case you forgot. My aunt told me to go sit with the kids rather than telling her that I was an adult and she was a child. She remarked that if I was so immature that I didn't want to transfer tables, I didn't deserve to be at the adults' table when I declined, especially because I was much older and the kids were between the ages of 7 and 14. She made sure I sat with the kids ever after. Even while I was working or engaged in other activities, Emily would constantly ask to play with me. While I refused, she would act out. I was constantly reprimanded by her mother for being a bad cousin and causing a youngster to cry. I was even made to go play with her by her. However, Emily would only ask me to do things for her, such as dress her dolls or prepare her a snack, and would act out if I didn't. She would constantly take my belongings, particularly my clothes and makeup. She threw tantrums when I told her not to since, first of all, she didn't ask for permission and, second, she wasn't old enough to wear cosmetics. I had to be giving because of her mother. When I got upset with Emily, my aunt would just respond that she was just a child. Emily also destroyed a lot of my belongings. Emily was always so envious of me, for some reason. She wanted all I owned. I had to give it to her, she insisted. My family threw a party to celebrate my bachelor's degree, but Emily was upset that she wasn't given the same attention or celebration. The following day, my aunt had the same party at the same location. Emily would ask her mother for and eventually receive every gift I possessed. Even my birthdays would be centered on her. Since she was only a youngster, I tried to be kind and patient with her. However, as she grew older, her behavior didn't appear to change. She was getting even more entitled if anything. We were celebrating my birthday 2 days ago and that was the last straw for me. Despite the fact that I was born in early May, we decided to hold the celebration in my grandparents' garden in June to ensure favorable weather. Emily began grumbling that we were celebrating my birthday a month after my real birthday as soon as she got there, around an hour late. She said that since it was around Christmas and she didn't actually have a birthday, we could celebrate hers as well if we were doing that. To be clear, she is still 1 month away from Christmas on November 29th, which is her birthday. We always got her lovely presents, and her mother, Karen, always made a great deal out of it. We would also be celebrating Emily's birthday, so she conveniently forgot about that and whined for 10 minutes or so before her mother gave in and asked my grandmother to get her another cake with candles. Emily then grumbled that since she had no presents, it wouldn't be a true birthday. I had lots of gifts, so if there were none, we could just share mine, Karen replied, adding that folks had time to go get her something. I was enraged. I asked my grandma if she had any cardboard boxes I could use when I visited her place. "Congratulations on being such a spoiled brat," was the only thing I placed inside the one I took and pretended to wrap as a gift. "Don't worry though, your entitled mother brought you up that way, so it's not your fault. I hope your present is enjoyable." It was juvenile, to be sure, but I'd had enough. For the last 3 years, she had spoiled the most significant events in my life, and I was sick of it. Emily and Karen were careful to sing "Happy Birthday, Dear Emily," loud enough to drown out everyone else when they sang "Happy Birthday" to me. Even though I was furious, I assumed she wouldn't be grinning for very long. I was correct. She began shouting and having a fit as soon as she opened my gift and saw what I had written. I simply smiled at her the entire time, even though her mother began to yell at me. After calling me a lot of derogatory names, Karen and Emily left right away. Since nobody liked Karen or Emily, my family didn't really respond. However, my aunt, uncle, and even some other family members have texted me a lot to express that I was a big jerk for spoiling a small girl's birthday. Although I don't really regret what I did, I keep wondering that maybe I went too far, so I haven't responded yet. Recent update. My dad called me just now. I'm going to attempt to tell you everything he told me before I forget all of it. He began by telling me that just before he contacted me, my uncle had called him and stated he understood my perspective and wasn't holding me responsible for whatever I said. However, my uncle also argued that I should have known better than to destroy Emily's excellent moment by humiliating her in front of everyone. In addition to humiliating herself by attempting to steal someone's birthday, my dad informed him that Emily had been bothering me nonstop for years. He also informed him that she shouldn't have had a great moment because, in reality, she shouldn't have had a moment at all. My dad said he believed my uncle couldn't say he agreed with me because if he did, Karen would be upset with him, but my uncle appeared to understand. My uncle added that he felt saddened by the disputes in our family since he only wanted his family to be happy and didn't want to miss seeing my dad or my grandparents. My father retorted that he ought to share that with his wife because, up until she arrived, our family had always been content and drama-free. In order for us to move past this, my uncle instructed my dad to ask me to apologize to Karen and Emily. My father assured him that although he would speak with me, he would support me and understand if I didn't want to apologize. I informed my father that I would not offer an apology and that I desired a sincere apology from Karen and Emily for their years-long mistreatment of me. They wouldn't be invited to any events involving me until then, and I would ignore them. In addition, my dad informed my uncle that he did not even understand why he was with Karen and that he should really get a divorce from her because she mistreated him and everyone else. My dad didn't tell me anything about it, but according to my uncle, it was complicated. My uncle claims that an increasing number of family members have been messaging Karen to let her know that her actions were inappropriate and to essentially share everything they had kept to themselves for years. Since he claims that I began a hate train against Karen, my uncle sort of holds me responsible, but I informed my dad that I thought she was the one who started it. In any case, he claimed that it was extremely awful because she was receiving texts from relatives who weren't present at my birthday. I realized that no one had spoken for the previous 3 years, but I think it would be going a bit too far, but eventually it had to be revealed. In order to speak with Karen and Emily and attempt to resolve the issue, my uncle asked my dad to invite me to his house either today or tomorrow. I didn't have to go if I didn't want to, according to my dad. I told him that I might go if my parents accompanied me, but I wouldn't go alone because I was sick of being teased by Karen and Emily. I'm not really sure if I should. Even though I have a lot more to say, I don't think they will suddenly understand that they have been a-holes for years. Even if Karen will never change, I also convince myself that perhaps Emily will unlearn such behavior and grow up to be a respectable adult. Additionally, I believe that I need to try to improve things since I think that everyone texting Karen is going a bit too far, and I want things to improve. Really, I have no idea. Shall I leave? Second update. I recently returned from seeing my uncle, Karen, and Emily. But before I tell you how it went, I want to make a few clarifications. Many of you advised me against posting my most recent update since it would only result in an apology and make no difference. But at least I could get it off my chest and stop thinking about it, knowing that I had said what I had to say, even if it didn't alter anything or make them realize how terrible their behavior was. In addition, I had stated that I would only go if my father accompanied me, if we met in a park rather than at their house, if they allowed me to talk without interrupting, and if they didn't anticipate an apology from me. I had also made it clear that if I felt uncomfortable or if any of these requirements weren't met, I would leave. I don't blame anyone for not speaking up earlier, and I don't blame myself for not responding sooner, in response to some of the comments on my previous post. I merely wanted to keep my family harmonious, primarily for the benefit of my grandparents, who value family much and find it really painful when their relatives argue. I don't really regret not saying something sooner, even though I know I could have and perhaps should have. Anyway, let's get to the exciting part. I met them in a park approximately an hour ago and this is how it happened. I had a list of things I wanted to say, which was essentially a rundown of all the times Emily or Karen had acted like entitled brats. I informed them of this and went into great detail about how disrespectful that was. I'm fairly pleased with myself for maintaining my composure the entire time, and they all had the grace to wait for me to complete without interjecting. Thus, it was a good beginning. After I was done, Karen began to argue that I was essentially whining pointlessly because some of the things I had mentioned were really trivial and unimportant. However, I shared with them both minor and major issues since I wanted to share everything that had disturbed me. Karen then acted as though she had only heard me discuss the minor matters, like Emily wanting to try on my makeup, asking me to play with my cousin, or some of the minor remarks they had made about me. I went on to tell her that she was well aware that wasn't the main issue and that if everyone was having the same issues with her, then perhaps we weren't all overly sensitive and she was the real issue. That annoyed her, so she simply stated, "This family doesn't know how to treat newcomers." To which I didn't respond. "You asked for explanations and you got explanations," my uncle said as he entered the room at that point. "Why did you insist on talking to her if you didn't want her to tell you what was wrong?" I believe she simply muttered, "That's it, we're leaving," since she was too surprised to respond. Emily said to me, "Sorry I ruined your stuff in your birthday," before she and her mother departed. I would say that this talk went better than I had anticipated, especially considering my lack of optimism and low expectations. Since her mother didn't perceive the issue, Emily's apologies seemed sincere, though I'm not sure if it was. I am aware, therefore, that she was not asked to apologize. It's okay that Karen didn't see the issue because I didn't anticipate her doing so. Despite the fact that my uncle will likely face consequences, I'm glad he spoke to Karen. "I did well," my dad said, "and we could all go on now that it was over." Update 3. As I indicated in my previous essay, my uncle advised Karen not to come if she didn't want an explanation. I warned him that saying that would get him into trouble at home. Yes, I was correct. My uncle arrived at our house with a suitcase about an hour ago and asked my dad if he could stay with us. After we told him to come, he told us what had happened, and we realized right away that he had gotten into a quarrel with Karen. I'll do my best to recall what I can. After I spoke with them, Karen ignored my uncle for the remainder of the day and gave him the silent treatment when they came home. To be honest, given how manipulative she is, I'm not particularly surprised by that. She knew just how to apologize and make him feel horrible. But my uncle simply took his penalty because he didn't want to apologize. When he heard Karen telling Emily that it was quite acceptable for her to act in such a way and to make demands on other people this afternoon, chaos ensued. In essence, she told her that it simply made her a strong, independent and determined woman, and that people became irate because they were afraid of that and didn't want her to be in a position of authority. My uncle finally had enough and stepped in, claiming that those who were truly successful knew how to achieve their goals while showing respect for others, and that being disrespectful was not the same as being powerful. In response to his constant defense of his of a niece or something, Karen supposedly became quite irate and began yelling at him. After that, my uncle informed her that what I had told her was true and based on her actual actions. He advised her to alter her conduct and acknowledge that she was the issue if it caused her to feel uneasy and irate. He got weary of her ranting and decided to take a drive because she kept yelling at him. She had placed a bag with some of his belongings in front of the door and locked him outside when he returned. Thus, he visited our home. Since she isn't responding to him right now, he is considering calling a divorce lawyer, which he plans to attempt tomorrow. Karen doesn't respond to calls, even though my grandparents have tried calling her. I regret that I started all of this, but it also eventually helped him see what a horrible person she is. Well done, he. The fact that Emily will only have her mother to teach her right from wrong if they divorce and that she will most likely wind up like her is what saddens me the most. I'm not sure if she will ever change, which saddens me because I thought she was beginning to recognize how disrespectful her actions had been. Am I the asshole for exposing my brother's affair with my ex at my wedding? Now his pregnant wife wants a divorce? I apologize in advance for making this a lengthy read. Last week, Meg, 25F, the love of my life, and I, 32M, were married. The wedding ceremony was lovely, although, to be honest, there was some unnecessary drama. My brother may have to deal with a divorce as a result of what transpired. The family is berating me day and night, demanding that I make amends, and hell has fallen upon me. But I honestly don't think I'm at fault, which is why I've come here to get advice and insights. My brother, Colin, 34M, and I don't get along well. As children, we were pretty close as two brothers can be anyway. Although we had our share of arguments, our connection as siblings was never tense. We got along well because I knew he had my back and I had his. Our parents always prioritized family and made an effort to teach us the same principles. Regretfully, I was the only one who exhibited those principles. I began dating Shay, now 32F, 6 years ago when I was 26 years old. Everyone knew that I was very in love with her. She belonged to the same circle of friends that I was then hanging out with, and I fell in love with her right away. She was everything to me: intelligent, beautiful, tall, witty and attractive. I totally forgot about her poison since I was so enamored with her. She was toxic, boy. My life became consumed by drama the moment I began dating her. Although she was a wonderful girl, she wasn't my match. We were completely incompatible. She was completely confrontational, whereas I was not. She was a drama queen, literally living for it. Every other week, there was a fresh argument about something that, in my opinion, was unimportant. But I kept ignoring all the warning signs because I was so enamored with her. After 6 months of dating, I discovered she was having an affair with a coworker. I was devastated when I accidentally found out. She denied it until I challenged her, at which point she broke down and spoke clean. Despite my sadness, she apologized profusely. She admitted her error and promised to try her hardest to win back my trust. I foolishly trusted her. Despite my knowledge that I shouldn't, I gave her another chance. I've never been disproven in my belief that cheaters never change. I've known cheats my entire life and none of them were able to change their habits. Because I thought, or rather hoped, that this time would be different, I gave her a chance despite knowing all of that. I was mistaken. It was all okay for the first couple weeks. I felt that perhaps we could get past the tragedy and start a new life together, so I began to trust her once more. However, after 3 or 4 months, I began to have a persistent sense that something was off. She was behaving suspiciously and shadily. I justified her actions because I lacked evidence and didn't want to think she was cheating once more. However, the sensation persisted. At last, I asked her if she had anything to tell me or if something was happening. She got defensive and accused me of having unfounded suspicions about her. She claimed that in order to save her time in trying to regain my trust, I should have informed her if I'd decided never to trust her again. She deceived me into thinking I was being suspicious. I trusted her. Weeks went by with no change in her behavior. I started secretly checking her phone since the overanalyzing was making me nuts. I should have realized the relationship was over at that moment. I had absolutely no faith in her. I should have left even if I hadn't discovered anything because I believed she was capable of cheating. However, I'm happy I pried because I discovered something that fundamentally altered my life, and it hasn't been the same since. It took me a long time to realize what was going on, but when I did, I felt like I had been hit in the face. In essence, she had been unfaithful to me for some time, but not just with anyone. She was seeing Colin instead of me. When I saw those texts, I was hurt as I had never been before. The worst kind of betrayal came from the 2 individuals who were meant to be the closest to me. What I was reading was unbelievable. All it did was make me want to cry uncontrollably and drop on my knees. Shay came in at that point and noticed me using her phone. She became irate with me, accusing me of violating her privacy. I just threw the phone against the wall, hurried out and showed her which chat I had open. I believe I spent 3 or 4 hours walking. She contacted me a few times, but I never picked up. She forced Colin to phone me after realizing I wouldn't be speaking to her. I wasn't having any of it when he called once and texted me a few times with phrases like, "I want to explain, and it's not what you think." I wasn't going to reject my own eyes, and what I had witnessed was sufficient evidence. When I got home, I texted Shay to tell her to come get her belongings from my house the next day. She called me once more, but I didn't pick up. I was numb for the following few days. I didn't speak with anybody. I was thankful when she arrived, gathered her belongings and departed without making a scene. After that, Colin made no attempt to get in touch with me, and how could he? After what he had done, what could he possibly say to me? I called my folks a week or so later and explained all that had transpired. In addition, I informed them that Colin was deceased and that if he were still alive, I would not be returning home. Although they were upset with the circumstance, they initially stood by me. I liked that they even went up to Colin. According to what I understand, Colin became defensive and said that he and Shay were in love, but my parents didn't agree. I was appreciative of their help during those initial months. I stopped talking to Colin altogether and began going to therapy. I came to understand how toxic Shay was to me during treatment. At that point, I started to think that this whole situation was perhaps a blessing in disguise. Although it was extremely painful, it prevented a terrible future for me. I eventually moved on from that episode, but I never spoke to Colin again and never forgave him. I met Meg a few months later, and the rest is history. When we first started dating, our relationship was calm and pleasant, very different from the turbulent one I experienced with Shay. It wasn't until we decided to get married a few years later that I told my family about Meg. She was fully aware of my predicament with Colin and my reluctance to introduce her to my family. My folks were overjoyed when I eventually presented her to them and announced our engagement. They expressed their happiness and complimented me. They did, however, Add that this was a chance to patch things up with Colin. I felt hurt and astonished. Given that I had moved on and Colin and Shay were no longer together, my mother proposed that we move on as brothers and leave the past behind us. I informed her that I would never forgive Colin for betraying me, but I made an effort to remain courteous. It was about my brother's ability to do something so terrible to me, not about Shay. Mom became irate and said that Colin and I had to be together because we were brothers. I informed her that Colin had shattered the connection of allegiance, which should be reciprocal. Whether or not to forgive him was up to me. When things became heated, Dad stepped in and told Mom to stop talking. Despite her reluctance, she was obviously upset. Mom even attempted to get Meg involved in the awkward dinner in the hopes that she would persuade me to make amends. Meg, however, merely stated that she believed I would make the best choice for me and that I would, if at all, forgive Colin when the time was right. By now, Mom was virtually enraged. She had this idealistic vision of our family as it was and will always be, and I'm not sure why or how she believed that I would simply forget this and move on. She refused to acknowledge that the farce was over and that the family would never return to its previous state. Mom agreed when Dad told her that the subject would not be discussed again. After a period of tension, things between us gradually improved. I had nothing to complain about because she made an effort to be extremely careful of limits and didn't bring up Colin again. I had no idea that my parents were plotting an intervention and were prepared to spoil my wedding. Both Mom and Meg's mother participated in the wedding preparations. She was aware of the dress code, the number of guests and all the preparations ahead of time. However, my dad didn't participate much in the process. During the preparation phase, Mom didn't do anything unusual. There was not a single mention of Colin. She even said that she was sorry for pushing me so hard that day. She said that she had believed there could be a chance for reconciliation but that she was mistaken because Colin had harmed me in the most worst way imaginable. Therefore, I had no cause to suspect her or question her motives. However, I was mistaken. My best man, Rick, 32M, a school acquaintance, rushed to me on the day of the wedding and said I had an urgent problem that needed to be resolved. When I asked him what was going on, he replied that Colin and his wife had arrived at the location with Mom and Dad. I was furious. I instructed Rick to force them to go. He claimed that although he made an effort to deal with it discreetly, they would not budge. Rick informed them that I would be upset if I saw Colin and that he was not invited. However, Mom asserted that, in contrast to Rick, Colin is your biological brother and that we are relatives. Yes, Mom, you will always pick Colin over Rick. Absolutely. The fact that they had plotted all of this behind my back astounded me. They had to give me an explanation right away. What the devil was going on? I asked my dad over the phone. He explained that they felt it was important to include Colin and his wife since they didn't want the family to think there was a divide between the two brothers. He requested that I simply put on a show for a few hours, after which they would depart and we could all act as though nothing had occurred. He said that everyone would benefit from this and that it wouldn't harm me to comply for the family's sake. Since he was aware that I didn't want anything to do with Colin, I told him that he had betrayed my confidence in the same way that his adored son had. I reminded him that this one day was my wedding day, and he had no right to destroy it. He advised me to quit being theatrical and suck it up for one day. He suggested my flair for theatrics needed to be toned down a touch and emphasized that nobody was destroying everything. I ought to have questioned him about why on my wedding day, this familial act was so important yet nobody cared to do the same for Colin's. I was too angry to think clearly though, and I had no idea Colin was married. I didn't think of such things until later. I was just blindly angry at the time. I wanted to rush over and yank them all out by their collars. Whether it created a stir or damaged the family's reputation didn't matter to me. All I wanted was for them to be gone. At that point, Rick approached me with a far less aggressive and more vengeful plan. He proposed that there was only one method to exact revenge on everyone, and if I was cool with it, we could carry it out immediately. Though it was too dramatic for a wedding, the notion felt interesting. Meg's big day was too important to me to spoil. I promised Rick that I would consider it and get back to him. Meg had seen Colin and his wife, but the wedding ceremony went off without a hitch. She wanted to know what was happening. I gave a quick explanation of what had transpired. I drew her aside after the ceremony to ask if she was comfortable with my carrying out Rick's plan. After some hesitation, she finally stated that there was no better time or location than right now if it was what I needed to do to put my family in their proper place. She was totally behind me. I love my wife God. After thanking her, I advised her to relax and take in the drama. Some stood up to speak when family members and close friends were present for the toasts. Rick laid the groundwork for me by initiating the entire process. We had a straightforward plan. I would toast Colin and tell him about his affair with my ex-girlfriend. which caused our split. Colin and my parents would suffer greatly because I intended to go into great depth in my speech. However, they were deserving. My parents deserved it for ignoring my sentiments and just caring about the family's reputation, and Colin deserved it for being a part of __. I got up and declared that I had a toast to give after everyone had completed theirs regarding Meg and me. I started by saying, I want to make a toast to my dear brother, Colin. Colin and my parents went completely white when I started it. But his wife was perplexed. I suspected that she was unaware of the reasons behind Colin and my separation. I was much more irate because she was heavily pregnant. Why would he parade his pregnant wife around at my wedding? I got the impression that his only goal was to steal the thunder. In any case, I went on with my toast. I mentioned that Colin and I had been brothers for a very long time and that I still wanted to appreciate him despite the fact that he had stabbed me in the back in a manner worse than an enemy. Why? Because I ended up with Meg because of his betrayal. I continued by explaining how, at the age of 26, I fell in love with a girl who wasn't the proper fit for me. However, I was too young and naive to see all of her shortcomings. I didn't decide to break up with her until she did the worst thing. I then informed everyone that my ex-girlfriend had cheated on me with my brother, dropping the bombshell. The final blow that caused us to split up, my healing process and ultimately my meeting with my wife Meg, was that betrayal. I also didn't spare my folks. I claimed to have harbored resentment for Colin for a very long period, to the extent that we had not spoken for 5 years. However, I was happy that my parents had decided to bring him and his wife in covertly so that I could at last thank Colin for bringing the right people into my life. Although I am aware that my parents were embarrassed, I wanted that very much. They had crossed all of my boundaries, and I wasn't going to give them away so lightly. It sounded as though my mother might burst into tears at the sound of the crowd's gasps. I had shouted it all for everyone to hear, and there was no way to defuse the situation. Colin's wife, whose name I don't even know, was staring at him in shock. Colin was unable to look people in the eye. He was completely embarrassed by it, and neither Rick, Meg, nor I did anything to lighten the mood. My parents were sitting there looking at the floor. Even though Mom was trying her hardest not to cry, her faint sniffles could be heard in the quiet room as Dad fidgeted with his fingers. I thought I could hear my heartbeat in the eerie silence because of how tense the mood was. I simply sat down and began eating after finishing my toast. Colin and my family were the center of attention, but no one spoke. At last, his wife stood up, apologized on his behalf, and expressed gratitude to us for letting them join in the festivities. Then she bounded away. I couldn't help but feel awful for making her go through this humiliation when she hadn't done anything wrong. It's unfortunate that she was caught in the crossfire, but I had to hold Colin and my parents responsible. The real fun only started after my parents and my beloved brother left. Since then though, I've received a ton of texts from my parents, particularly my mother, telling me that I had no right to publicly discuss the family's private issues. She said that in front of everyone, I had torn their dignity to shreds. I wanted to enjoy at least portion of my wedding, so I didn't reply. However, Mom went one step farther and began texting Meg. I am aware that it is affecting her. Meg keeps sending messages from new numbers or making new Instagram profiles, even after I warned her to block Mom. Meg is suffering greatly as a result of all this negativity, and I feel bad for bringing her into this situation. She is not deserving of it. She saved my life and now I've brought her down with me. It is incorrect. Mom claims that I was the one who caused the scene at the wedding, even though I've urged her to stop bringing Meg into the drama. Meg and I will now have to deal with the consequences of my actions, she says. I am aware that arguing with my mother is futile. Nothing I say will convince her to see reason since she is obstinate. Also, given that what I did was malicious, I can't really expect her to. I feel awful since my wife is the last person I want to suffer because of my little revenge trip. Update 1. Amy, my sister-in-law, called me. I picked up since I didn't have her number stored. She was really kind and expressed her sincere regret for phoning at such an unexpected time. She said that what Colin told her was totally different, so she wanted to meet me and hear my side of the story. She pleaded with me to keep her visit to me a secret from the rest of the family. She didn't need to fear because I informed her that I don't speak to them anyhow. To be honest, I had conflicting feelings about this. However, Meg reminded me that Amy is expecting a kid and should be aware of Colin's true character. Meg is correct, despite the fact that this will probably lead to further issues. Amy needs to understand that she is not at blame. Since she has never mistreated me, I cannot contribute to her life being ruined. I thus consented to meet her. However, I'm somewhat anxious. I don't think things will work out well for Colin because this issue has gotten far worse than I had expected. Am I sorry for Colin? Not at all. That piece of __ deserves all the awful things that happened to him. I simply don't want to be caught up in family drama once more, especially if Meg is involved. Even though I know it won't go well, I still hope it does. I know that this drama won't end with me meeting Amy today because I witnessed her response to the entire outburst during the wedding. Update 2. I believe the meeting went well. I was quite sorry for her. She arrived by herself, and since she is pregnant, the baby could arrive at any moment. She appeared to have been crying. Fortunately, Meg was present as well, and she somewhat diffused the situation. Amy replied she wanted to hear the entire story again when I asked if she had any questions. I explained everything to her, including how I confronted Colin and how I learned about it. I also described how, due to family, Mom had been nagging me to get Colin and I back to normal. I inquired about the tale Colin had shared with Amy. According to her, Shay fell in love with Colin despite his claims that we were just friends. He claims that I ended our friendship because I couldn't admit that I had always harbored feelings for Shay. Colin claimed that he and Shay didn't start dating until a year after I stopped communicating with her, and even then, their time together was short. That was a total falsehood, I told Amy. I never cared to inquire or find out how long they dated, so I was unaware of it. I then inquired as to whether Colin's account of events had been supported by my parents. Amy declined. Colin informed her that my parents didn't like talking about me because I had cut everyone off and that it was a very sensitive subject for the family. She said that when she first met my parents, they hardly ever addressed me. I inquired if she had received an invitation to the wedding from my parents. She claimed that Mom was primarily pressuring them to go. Since they hadn't received an invitation and Amy was aware of the animosity between Colin and me, she didn't want to attend. But Mom basically used blackmail to get them to go. Colin didn't want to go either, Amy clarified, but Mom insisted that we let bygones be bygones, and be a family again, for the sake of the kid. She didn't try to check with me because she assumed that I might have told Mom that I wanted Colin there. Furthermore, she never thought that reality would be so different and completely upend her life. Although I felt terrible for her, I was at a loss for what to do. I advised her to contact me if I could be of any assistance. Because my brother is a terrible person who not only betrays his brother but also lies to his wife, I don't want her to suffer. She was really furious about the whole situation, which suggests that she plans to proceed with a divorce. All I can hope is that she has a successful outcome. It's challenging to be a single mother. Update 3. Amy has submitted a divorce petition. My father called to let me know. He isn't holding me responsible for everything that occurred, in contrast to Colin and my mother. He simply told me to keep my distance from Colin because he's going through a difficult moment and might try to get in touch with me. I informed him that until they chose to invite Colin to my wedding, I had been avoiding them. He didn't answer that. My mom and Colin are apparently attempting to contact me, but I'm secure from their assault because they've been blocked everywhere. Although I am unaware of all the specifics of the divorce, I am aware that Colin is not handling it well because he really loves Amy. I can't help but feel a little smug about karma finally getting back at him. However, I feel sorry for Amy and Meg, and we want to provide Amy with assistance when the baby is born. What about Colin? I have no regrets or feelings of guilt. He is deserving. He purposefully broke me once, and now he's broken himself. When you violate someone's trust and let them down, that's just the way it goes.
My ex-wife divorced me after a personality change. I found out I have a brain tumor. How do I move forward? My name is Andrew, 32 years old. In 2022, the chapter closed on a significant part of my life. My marriage. It wasn't just any marriage. It was a journey filled with love, adventure, and an exceptionally deep connection. Reflecting on it, our relationship wasn't merely between two people, it intertwined with entire families, becoming a testament to the love and bonds we shared. My ex-wife's brother and I were so close that I had the honor of being his best man, an experience that highlighted the depth of our intertwined lives. I met Sarah, my ex-wife, 33 years old, during a time of great optimism and hope. We were young and in love, ready to take on the world together. Our relationship blossomed quickly, fueled by late-night conversations and spontaneous adventures. We spent hours exploring the city together, getting lost in its winding streets and hidden treasures. We laughed, we argued, and we discovered new things about each other every day. It was a time of discovery and growth, a period of intense bonding that laid the foundation for what was to come. One of the defining moments of our early relationship was our trip to Belize. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision, fueled by a sense of wanderlust and a desire to experience new cultures together. We found ourselves immersed in the beauty of the Mayan ruins, the ancient stones whispering secrets of a bygone era. It was there, amidst the backdrop of history and romance, that I made the decision to propose to Sarah. Sarah said yes, of course, her eyes sparkling with joy and excitement. In that moment, surrounded by the ancient ruins and the promise of a future together, we felt invincible. We returned home with hearts full of love and dreams of the life we would build together. Looking back on those early days now, it's hard to believe how much has changed. The innocence of our youth has been replaced by the harsh realities of adulthood, and the promise of forever has given way to the harsh reality. Our bond, as beautiful as it was, began to face trials that neither of us could have anticipated. Initially, it was like any other challenge a couple might face, something we believed we could overcome together. Yet as time passed, the hurdles became more daunting, testing our resilience in ways we never imagined. My mental health began to deteriorate, casting long shadows over our lives. What started as subtle changes in my behavior soon spiraled into something far more severe. In public, I was constantly on edge, plagued by an unshakable feeling of being followed. This paranoia escalated to the point where I became convinced our home was bugged, and that police or even government agencies were monitoring me. These weren't fleeting thoughts, they were deeply ingrained beliefs that dictated my actions, leading to a profound sense of fear and isolation. The day my wife, out of sheer desperation and concern, convinced me to go to the emergency room, marked a pivotal moment in our story. There, I received a diagnosis that seemed to offer some answers. A psychotic break, accompanied by bipolar and schizoaffective disorder. This diagnosis was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it provided a name to the chaos that had taken over our lives, but on the other, it brought a new set of challenges and questions about the future. Despite these difficulties, my wife stood by me, embodying patience and compassion. But as time went on, even with treatment, my behavior didn't stabilize. It was as if the essence of who I had always been was slipping away, replaced by someone we both didn't recognize. This transformation wasn't just internal, it manifested in actions that were out of character for me. I started lying and turned to substance abuse, a stark departure from my previous lifestyle of social drinking and the occasional recreational use of weed. It was a downward spiral, one that seemed to pull me further away from the person I once was and the life we had built together. I knew I was treading on thin ice when I started dabbling with drugs behind my wife's back. But somehow, the thrill of it all seemed to override any rational thought. Stupid, I know. And now facing the consequences, I can't help but feel like the biggest jerk on the planet. The day she found out was like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. I could see the anger bubbling beneath the surface as she stared at me, her eyes narrowing into icy slits. It was a look I never wanted to see directed at me, yet there it was, burning into my soul. She didn't even need to say anything. Her silence spoke volumes, echoing with disappointment, betrayal, and hurt. My stomach churned with guilt as I tried to come up with some feeble excuse, but the words caught in my throat like a noose tightening around my neck. Then came the explosion. The torrent of words, sharp as knives, lashing out at me with a force that left me reeling. She didn't hold back, letting me have it with both barrels. Every lie, every deception, laid bare for all to see. And I couldn't do anything but stand there, taking it all like a punching bag. I watched as tears welled up in her eyes, her voice cracking with emotion as she struggled to make sense of it all. It was like watching someone I loved being torn apart from the inside out, and knowing that I was the one responsible for causing that pain made it all the more unbearable. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, to tell her that I was sorry, but the words caught in my throat like a lump of coal. What could I possibly say to make things right again? How could I undo the damage I had done? The silence that followed was deafening, stretching out between us like an unbridgeable chasm. I could feel the weight of her gaze bearing down on me, heavy with disappointment and disbelief. And in that moment, I knew that things would never be the same again. Days turned into weeks, and still, the rift between us remained. Every attempt at reconciliation seemed to only drive us further apart, like ships passing in the night. I could see the pain etched into her every movement, hear it in the way her voice trembled whenever she spoke to me. I wanted to make things right, to prove to her that I could change, that I could be the man she deserved. But no matter how hard I tried, it never seemed to be enough. The trust that had once bound us together had been shattered beyond repair, leaving nothing but a hollow emptiness in its wake. And so, I found myself trapped in a never-ending cycle of guilt and remorse, haunted by the memory of her tears and the sound of her voice breaking as she uttered those words that cut me to the core. How could I have been so blind, so selfish, to jeopardize everything we had built together? I wish I could turn back the clock, to undo the mistakes of the past and start afresh. But life doesn't work that way, and all I can do now is live with the consequences of my actions. Eventually the strain became too much. The day my wife told me she wanted a divorce was a day I'll never forget. It was a moment filled with a profound sense of loss, not just for the partnership we had, but for the future we had envisioned together. In the aftermath, I tried to maintain some connection with her family, particularly her brother, who had tried to support us both. But over time, even that connection faded, leaving me more isolated than ever. Friends and family gradually distanced themselves, a response to the ongoing turmoil and additional revelations that came to light. In their eyes, and perhaps rightfully so, I had become a pariah. The year that followed was one of deep reflection and struggle. I grappled with the consequences of my actions and the reality of my situation. I checked myself into rehab, determined to reclaim my life and rebuild what I had destroyed. The first few days were the hardest. Detoxing was hell, both physically and mentally. Every fiber of my being screamed for a fix, but I refused to give in. The counselors and therapists at the facility became my lifeline, guiding me through the darkest moments with compassion and understanding. Group therapy sessions forced me to confront the demons I had been running from for so long. I shared my story with strangers who quickly became confidants, realizing that I wasn't alone in my struggles. Together, we leaned on each other for support, finding strength in our shared experiences. As the days turned into weeks, I began to see glimpses of the man I used to be. The man Sarah fell in love with. Clear-headed and focused, I tackled each challenge head-on, determined to emerge from this ordeal a better version of myself. However, things didn't go as smoothly as I had anticipated. Jobs came and went, and I found myself barely scraping by, a stark contrast to the stability I once took for granted. It was a low point, both personally and professionally, one that forced me to confront the changes I needed to make in my life. Amid this turmoil, there were glimmers of hope. I managed to invest in property. Investing in property was a turning point for me. It felt like finally gaining solid ground after years of uncertainty. The process wasn't easy, and there were moments when I doubted if I could pull it off. But with determination and perseverance, I made it happen. Owning property provided a sense of stability and security that I had longed for. It was a tangible asset, something I could hold on to and build upon. Watching the value of the property grow over time was incredibly satisfying, knowing that I had made a smart investment for my future and for my family. But beyond the financial benefits, owning property gave me a sense of pride and accomplishment. It was a symbol of how far I had come from the depths of addiction, proof that I was capable of building a better life for myself and my loved ones. A new companion, a little pup named Archie, brought a sense of comfort and purpose to my days. Therapy became a beacon of light, offering insights and coping mechanisms that slowly helped me navigate the complexities of my situation. After everything gradually stabilized, I found myself facing unexpected health issues. Headaches became a daily occurrence, a constant throb in the background of my life. Riding the elevator triggered dizzy spells, leaving me disoriented and unsteady on my feet. Concentrating for too long brought on pounding headaches, as if my brain was protesting the effort. Even driving became a challenge, with persistent ringing in my ears adding to the discomfort. At first I brushed off these symptoms as mere inconveniences, attributing them to the stress I had endured and my erratic eating habits. I convinced myself that I was simply feeling weak, a side effect of everything I had been through. But as the days turned into weeks and the symptoms persisted, I began to worry. However, because I was too busy, I did not make an appointment to see a doctor. The revelation came like a thief in the night, unexpected and life-altering. It was during a routine business trip, one of many I'd taken in the recent months as I tried to rebuild the semblance of a normal life, that the world as I knew it came crashing down. One minute I was navigating through the bustling airport, the next I was on the ground, consciousness slipping away like grains of sand through my fingers. Waking up in the hospital was a disorienting experience. The sterile white of the room, the beep of machines monitoring my vitals, and the concerned faces of medical staff hovering over me. It was a stark contrast to the life of constant movement I had been leading. The confusion was palpable, the fear, a silent companion as I tried to piece together what had happened. The journey to diagnosis was fraught with uncertainty. Initial tests were inconclusive, leading to more questions than answers. My medical history, a tapestry of misdiagnoses and treatments for mental health issues, painted a complex picture that puzzled the medical team. Yet it was the insistence of a keen-eyed doctor who noticed the peculiarities in my symptoms and history that led to the decisive MRI scan. The scan revealed the unexpected culprit, a brain tumor, nestled in a part of my brain where it had been orchestrating the chaos in my life from the shadows. The moment of revelation was surreal. Sitting in the dimly lit office, the images of my brain displayed on the screen, I listened as the doctor explained the nature of the tumor. It was benign, they believed, but its location had been impacting my behavior and mental health in profound ways. The words brain tumor echoed in my mind, a stark contrast to the previous labels I had been given. My initial reaction was one of shock, quickly followed by a flood of relief. For years I had been a prisoner in my own body, my mind a battlefield of paranoia, erratic behavior, and unexplainable emotions. To have an explanation, a tangible cause for the turmoil, was a liberation I hadn't expected. It was as if the pieces of a puzzle had suddenly clicked into place, offering a clarity I had been seeking for so long. My mind wandered to my ex-wife, to the life we had shared, and to the dreams we had for the future. Could the unraveling of our marriage have been avoided if this diagnosis had come sooner? The thought was haunting, a bitter reminder of the fragility of life and the impact of what lies hidden within us. In the immediate aftermath of my diagnosis, a flood of emotions and thoughts besieged me. There was an undeniable urge to share this significant discovery with my ex-wife and her brother, not for the sake of rekindling lost connections but to offer them an explanation, an insight into the chaos that had dismantled the life we once cherished together. Yet, as I dwelled on this impulse, the complexities of such an action became increasingly apparent. The pain, confusion, and upheaval that my behavior had inflicted were not wounds easily healed, and my reemergence, regardless of the intentions behind it, risked reopening scars that had perhaps begun to mend. The bond my ex-wife and I shared was once unbreakable, forged in the fires of shared dreams, laughter, and love. Her brother too was not just a sibling by marriage but a friend, a confidant. The dissolution of our marriage wasn't merely a legal separation, it was the crumbling of a shared existence that had intertwined deeply with our families, friendships, and sense of self. The decision to divorce, while devastating, was a necessary measure she felt compelled to take for her well-being and, painfully, I couldn't dispute her reasons. Our paths had diverged, irrevocably altered by the storm that had swept through our lives. In the wake of the divorce, the silence between us grew, a chasm widened by lost trust and hurtful actions. The initial attempts to maintain a connection, to reach out through messages and emails, soon gave way to the realization that such efforts were met with silence, not out of malice but a need for closure and healing. Mutual friends too, found themselves caught in the aftermath, eventually stepping back as the complexity of our situation made it difficult to navigate the waters of allegiance and support. Yet, the shadow of my past, the what-ifs and the realizations brought about by my diagnosis, lingered. Update. After everything that happened, I decided not to reach out to my ex-wife and her brother. Many suggested I should try to reconnect, offering various methods to ensure the message would reach her. From social media posts designed to indirectly inform her to direct messages delivered through mutual friends, each suggestion was made with good intentions. Yet, despite the appeal of these ideas and my initial inclination to follow through, I've opted for a different path. Social media, for one, doesn't hold the same presence in my life as it does for others. My online footprint is minimal, with an Instagram account for my dog, Archie, and a practically anonymous Facebook profile. The idea of using these platforms to reach out indirectly felt both impractical and somewhat impersonal given the gravity of the situation. But beyond the logistical hurdles lies a deeper consideration. What impact would my reaching out have on my ex-wife? Would it truly be for her benefit, or would it be a selfish act on my part, driven by my own desires and regrets? The more I pondered this, the clearer it became that initiating contact might not be in her best interest. She's a strong, resilient person, and I have no doubt that she's built a fulfilling life for herself since we parted ways. To re-enter her life now, especially with such significant news, could potentially cause unnecessary pain and confusion. This realization forced me to confront my own motivations. A part of me had harbored hopes for reconciliation, for a fairy tale ending where everything was forgiven and we could start anew. However, such fantasies overlook the real and profound reasons for our separation. The issues that led to our divorce weren't just fleeting challenges, they were significant life-altering problems that required more than just a hopeful reunion to resolve. Reflecting on our shared past, I'm filled with a sense of nostalgia and affection. Our relationship was rich with shared experiences and memories, from competitive board games to shared adventures, each moment a testament to the depth of our connection. I cherish those times, from the silly questions we asked each other to the roles we played in each other's lives, including the Dungeons and Dragons campaigns that brought us so much joy. Her presence in my life, her thoughts and her companionship are deeply missed. Yet despite this longing, I understand that moving forward is essential. My recent diagnosis and the revelations that came with it have provided a new perspective on my past actions and the future. It's clear that my journey from here must be one of personal growth and accountability. The upcoming surgery represents not just a step towards physical recovery but also a metaphorical step towards healing and understanding. Alongside my journey to recovery, I've had to come to terms with the fact that my ex-wife has moved on and found a new partner. It wasn't easy to swallow at first, seeing her with someone else, building a life that didn't include me. But I've learned to accept it, to let go of the past and focus on my own healing. I'll admit, there were moments when jealousy and resentment threatened to consume me. I wondered why I wasn't enough, why our marriage had fallen apart. But dwelling on those thoughts only dragged me back into the darkness I've fought so hard to escape. Instead, I chose to focus on the present, on rebuilding myself from the ground up. I poured my energy into my recovery, into finding stability and purpose in my life once again. And slowly but surely, I started to see progress. With each passing day of sobriety, I regained a sense of clarity and strength I thought I had lost forever. I rediscovered hobbies and passions I had long neglected, finding joy in the simple pleasures of life once more. And as I began to heal, I realized that my ex-wife's happiness no longer held power over me. I won't lie and say it was easy. There were moments of doubt and despair, times when I questioned whether I would ever truly be okay. But through it all, I held on to the belief that I was strong enough to overcome anything life threw my way. And you know what? I am. I may not have all the answers, and I may still stumble from time to time, but I'm learning to embrace the journey, to find beauty in the brokenness. So, to my ex-wife, if you ever happen to read this, I want you to know that I'm okay. I've found peace within myself and I hold no ill will towards you or your new partner. I hope you're happy, truly happy, because that's all I ever wanted for you. I never said it before because I didn't want to burden you with my struggles, but I want you to know that I love you. I always have, and I always will. And even though our paths have diverged, I'll always cherish the memories we shared. As for me, I'm looking forward to the future with a newfound sense of hope and optimism. Whether or not I ever fully conquer this disease, I refuse to let it define me. This realization forced me to confront my own motivations. A part of me had harbored hopes for reconciliation, for a fairy tale ending where everything was forgiven and we could start anew. However, such fantasies overlooked the real and profound reasons for our separation. The issues that led to our divorce weren't just fleeting challenges. They were significant, life-altering problems that required more than just a hopeful reunion to resolve. Reflecting on our shared past, I'm filled with a sense of nostalgia and affection. Our relationship was rich with shared experiences and memories, from competitive board games to shared adventures, each moment a testament to the depth of our connection. I cherish those times, from the silly questions we asked each other to the roles we played in each other's lives, including the Dungeons & Dragons campaigns that brought us so much joy. Her presence in my life, her thoughts, and her companionship are deeply missed. Yet despite this longing, I understand that moving forward is essential. My recent diagnosis and the revelations that came with it have provided a new perspective on my past actions and the future. It's clear that my journey from here must be one of personal growth and accountability. The upcoming surgery represents not just a step towards physical recovery but also a metaphorical step towards healing and understanding. Alongside my journey to recovery, I've had to come to terms with the fact that my ex-wife has moved on and found a new partner. It wasn't easy to swallow at first, seeing her with someone else, building a life that didn't include me. But I've learned to accept it, to let go of the past and focus on my own healing. I'll admit, there were moments when jealousy and resentment threatened to consume me. I wondered why I wasn't enough, why our marriage had fallen apart. But dwelling on those thoughts only dragged me back into the darkness I've fought so hard to escape. Instead, I chose to focus on the present, on rebuilding myself from the ground up. I poured my energy into my recovery, into finding stability and purpose in my life once again. And slowly but surely, I started to see progress. With each passing day of sobriety, I regained a sense of clarity and strength I thought I had lost forever. I rediscovered hobbies and passions I had long neglected, finding joy in the simple pleasures of life once more. And as I began to heal, I realized that my ex-wife's happiness no longer held power over me. I won't lie and say it was easy. There were moments of doubt and despair, times when I questioned whether I would ever truly be okay. But through it all, I held on to the belief that I was strong enough to overcome anything life threw my way. And you know what? I am. I may not have all the answers and I may still stumble from time to time, but I'm learning to embrace the journey to find beauty in the brokenness. So, to my ex-wife, if you ever happen to read this, I want you to know that I'm okay. I've found peace within myself, and I hold no ill will towards you or your new partner. I hope you're happy, truly happy, because that's all I ever wanted for you. I never said it before because I didn't want to burden you with my struggles, but I want you to know that I love you. I always have, and I always will. And even though our paths have diverged, I'll always cherish the memories we shared. As for me, I'm looking forward to the future with a newfound sense of hope and optimism. Whether or not I ever fully conquer this disease, I refuse to let it define me. I choose to live each day to the fullest, to find happiness in the small moments, and to love fiercely, just as I always have. In the meantime, life continues to move at a relentless pace. Job opportunities have arisen, presenting new challenges and decisions, and my recent property purchase adds another layer of complexity to my situation. Each of these developments, while stressful, also brings a sense of purpose and progress. As I navigate this busy period, I find myself feeling optimistic for the first time in years. The prospect of what lies ahead, though uncertain, is invigorating. My focus now is on healing, both physically and emotionally, and on the growth that I hope will follow. The path ahead is unclear, but I'm ready to face it with a renewed sense of hope and determination. My story, with its twists and turns, may not have the resolution that some were hoping for. Yet it's a narrative that's still being written, with lessons learned and more yet to be discovered. For now, I'm content to take things one day at a time, appreciating the progress I've made and the potential for what's yet to come.
Mom said my sister should have married my husband, and now she's been coming over when I'm gone, walking around in towels. What should I do? Everyone around me thinks I'm overreacting, but I'm unhappy with my mother and my sister about something she said. Please be brutally honest and let me know if I'm acting insecurely or if my spouse and mother are mistaken. I'll give you a little background. Growing up, my husband James, 34M, and I, 29F, lived next door. My spouse and my sister, Fran, 34F, were in the same grade. Because my sister was so intelligent and attractive, everyone knew her at school. We all knew that James had a major crush on her. Fran scolded him in front of the entire school when he asked her out to senior prom. Although he relocated to a different state for college, they stayed buddies, and we only heard from him on the holidays. Growing up, James and I were never buddies because I was in middle school at the time of all of this. They would purposefully shun me or include me in their activities and hangouts, even though I was significantly younger than they were. I got my first job in the same city as James after attending a reputable institution. Since I didn't know anyone there, my mother advised me to get in touch with him. After becoming friends, we were married 3 years later. We both love our lives and have well-paying careers. Because James's mother was ill and our professions permitted us to work from home during COVID, we returned to our hometown. Fran had a decent life too. Her husband was wealthy, and she married him when she was 23. Fran found out 2 years ago that he had cheated on her with several different people during their marriage. She made the decision to end the relationship. Fran and my mother moved back. She was expecting hefty alimony and hadn't worked since her marriage. However, she hardly received anything and is having financial difficulties as a result of issues with a prenuptial agreement. She found a job, but she still lives with my mom because she can hardly afford a place of her own. She received a lot of support from James and me throughout this process. James and Fran have a unique affinity because they were childhood friends. When we all get together, I occasionally feel like the third wheel since they have their own inner jokes and stories. James, on the other hand, avoids her and has never given me any indication that he still harbors affections for her. However, Fran comes to see us 2 or 3 times a week, frequently stays for supper, and sleeps in our guest room. Although I don't like her visiting, I don't enjoy that she chats to James more than I do. When I'm not home, she always comes over, and when I return, I frequently find them watching TV together on the sofa. It takes me back to my early years, when I was barred from our basement when Fran was around. Additionally, Fran seems too at ease in James's presence. She sleeps in her underwear in the guest room without locking the door, or she leaves the shower and goes about the house in nothing but a towel. I've told her about my worries, but she says it doesn't matter because we're family. James and I have also spoken. Now, whenever Fran mentions stories or inside jokes, he tries to explain them. This past weekend was the primary problem. Fran told me stories about how James used to handle her chores and homework when she was a child while we were hanging out with my mom. He loved me so much, and I felt bad for taking advantage of him, she added. I wish you had the intelligence to marry James instead of your loser husband, my mother jokes. You would not be in this predicament. Fran nodded and grinned, but I felt offended. I informed my mother that James was my spouse, and I didn't like the remarks. My mother reiterated that she felt this way because Fran is having financial difficulties, whereas James and I both earn a lot of money. It's just hypothetical, she continued. I wish for the happiness of both of my girls. Fran added that I was being very sensitive and advised me not to take it personally. After arguing with them both, I walked away. James said it was a harmless joke and agreed with my mom and Fran when I told him about it. He said it was between my sister and I when I brought up the subject of Fran's actions at our residence. He refuses to let Fran know what she is or is not allowed to wear in our house. Everyone has apologized, but I still feel uneasy. Am I mistaken for my reaction, or is everyone else right and I should feel more confident about my connection with James? Comments to which the OP responded, NTA is the commenter. The remark made by your mother was unsuitable and disrespectful to your marriage. The fact that your husband is downplaying your emotions regarding Fran's actions is alarming. It's about seeking respect in your relationship and at home, not about being insecure. OP, I've seen this pattern all my life. Fran has always treated me like a child because we are so different in age. I was simply offended that my mother made such remarks while utterly ignoring how I felt. But because of all the attention Fran received, I've always been envious of her. In our family, I was the odd nerdy little girl. Commenter: in 3 to 6 months, I'm waiting for Fran to do something with your spouse. You should also tell her to stop having sleepovers and unexpected visits. Put on some clothing for heaven's sake. Establish a clear line here and don't worry if people believe you're going overboard. OP, I'm somewhat concerned about all of these remarks. I will discuss this with my hubby. I don't want to come out as accusatory, but I was so uneasy about this whole thing that I didn't get much sleep last night. Even though I have complete faith in him, I'm reconsidering what Fran has done to him and how she has consistently minimized my emotions. Last night, I received a hesitant apology from my mother. She said that I'm overreacting and that she blurted out something foolish. I only want the best for both of my daughters, she says. Revised on October 22, 2024. I appreciate everyone's support of my earlier post. In summary, my mother said something offensive, wishing that my sister Fran had wed my husband James. My spouse attempted to minimize my emotions by claiming that I was overreacting to a harmless joke, but I was very unhappy. I apologize for the lengthy message, but a lot of you have been contacting me to ask for an update, so here it is. I became somewhat paranoid after reading the remarks. My anxiousness skyrocketed when I began to wonder if James married me because of his previous crush on Fran. I began to pry about. I knew there was nothing to conceal on his phone because my husband allows me to check it for new texts when he's not around. The fact that Fran always appears to know when I'm not home and that James and Fran are always seated on the same couch when I return, however, alarmed me. When I spoke with James, he acknowledged the validity of my feelings. He would not, however, criticize my mom or Fran, stating that Fran is going through a difficult period. I spent last Friday evening in the gym as usual. James was preparing dinner when I arrived home, and Fran was seated in the living room. I asked her why she was there because I was irritated. She said she came to hang out and had no intentions. I asked if she might come back at a later time, explaining that I wanted a peaceful weekend with my husband. She began defending my mom's remark as a joke I should stop making after realizing I was offended. We got into a fight after I told her I didn't think it was humorous. You're always such an insecure, annoying kid, she continued. It makes sense why no one liked you. Although it was really painful, James intervened and told Fran to go. He's never been so aggressive with her, in my experience. Fran murmured something disagreeable and walked away. I started crying by the end. James comforted me, but I was so distraught that I stayed in our room by myself the night. I jotted down a list of topics I wanted to talk about with James the following morning. I was able to better arrange my thoughts thanks to your remarks. After reading the comments, I began to wonder if James married me because I looked like Fran's sister or because he felt insecure about me. I talked to James about my fears and worries during a lengthy conversation we had in high school. I described how I feel when he spends so much time with Fran when she comes to visit and how they laugh about it together. I questioned him about his affections for her. He remained composed and grinned throughout. He promised to be truthful, but he urged me not to hold it against him afterwards. He said that he knew Fran had taken advantage of him during their time together at school as she was aware of his feelings for her. Fran tried to stay in touch with him when he went to college, but the distance helped him understand how badly she treated him. In order to concentrate on himself, he made the decision to sever his relationship with her. James clarified that this was the reason he stopped being friends with Fran and hardly ever visited during the holidays. When we were kids, he disregarded me and picked Fran over me, which I informed him bothered me. I often questioned whether I was his second choice because of this. He reminded me that when he started college, I was just 13. He jokingly said, "We'd be dealing with a completely different issue if I had liked you instead of Fran at that age." He said that he wasn't very excited to meet me when I originally contacted him because he believed I would be like Fran. But after spending some time with me, he saw that I was quite different from her. We quickly grew close, began dating, and eventually tied the knot. By the time Fran married, James saw that I frequently admired her and was jealous when she shared photos of her trips or showed off pricey presents from her husband. James claimed that because I seemed to perceive Fran as a North Star, he never explicitly informed me that he didn't enjoy hanging out with her. He told me that he had never been close to Fran and that, because they only saw each other a few times a year, he didn't mind her. But he wasn't sure how to behave following her divorce. He acknowledged that he was appreciative when I moved our family back to support his mother's health and that he wished to do the same for my family during Fran's divorce. Even though it meant going over high school things he would rather forget, he stood by Fran for me. I informed him that I found it bothersome that Fran would frequently drop by when I was at the gym in the evenings. He said that he thought it strange that she frequently paid me visits while I wasn't home and appeared to be familiar with my workout regimen. But he assured me that he would have informed me right away if Fran had ever done something troubling. He clarified that Fran simply likes to gossip about their high school pals and watch classic films and TV series that they grew familiar with. James advised me to have faith in him. Additionally, he volunteered to cut back on Fran's visits if that would help me feel more at ease, but he cautioned that I might end up getting back together with Fran in the future and didn't want him to appear like the bad guy. James, however, was adamant that he would not dictate to Fran what she should wear in the house because that would seem improper coming from him. Our chat gave me comfort. James has always been a fantastic husband, and I will always have faith in his dedication. My mother and Fran came to visit on Sunday. My mother expressed her heartfelt regret, claiming she never intended to offend me. She said that her remark about Fran and James wasn't meant to be taken seriously. Rather, she was merely expressing her hope that Fran might eventually meet someone as wonderful as James. Despite her initial harsh attitude, Fran also expressed regret for Friday's name-calling. She attributed her outburst to her hormones and explained that she frequently visited because she loved to spend time with her sister and closest friend. Fran is welcome to come at any time, but she should phone in advance to see if James and I have any plans. She concurred. I'm prepared to let this go, but since I know it annoys James as well, I want to set clear guidelines for when Fran can come and spend time with him alone. Now, everything is going well. Although I'm glad my darkest concerns didn't materialize, I acknowledge that I may require therapy to address my insecurities.
After my father was sentenced to 25 years in prison, my stepmother mistreated me. Should I send her and her despicable boyfriend to jail? Life, as I knew it, crumbled the day my father was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. My name is Alex, and I'm a 16-year-old trying to navigate a world that suddenly feels alien. The day the gavel came down, sealing my father's fate, marked the end of normalcy for me. It's strange how quickly life can pivot on a single moment, thrusting you into a narrative you never asked to be part of. Before that pivotal moment, we were a typical family, or as typical as any family can claim to be. My father, a man of strong principles but perhaps too rigid in his ways, was the anchor of our household. He ran a small local garage, a place where I spent countless afternoons after school, handing him tools or sweeping floors, basking in the mundane but comforting routine of our life. My mother, or rather my stepmom, Julia, entered our lives when I was 10. She brought a semblance of softness to our otherwise stoic home. Back then, she was the bridge between my father and me, translating his often harsh expectations into lessons of resilience and ambition. However, the tranquility of our existence was deceptive, hiding the brewing storm beneath its calm surface. My father, unbeknownst to me, had been entangled in activities far removed from the honest labor of his garage. It was a side of him that he kept well hidden, a shadowy figure that I would only come to know in the wake of his arrest. The details trickled in slowly, painting a picture of a man driven to desperate measures under the crushing weight of debt and a faltering business. He had become involved in a series of illegal dealings, a last-ditch effort to salvage his faltering garage and secure our financial future. But the law, with its indifferent gaze, sees not the desperation but the deed. And so, my father was found guilty, leaving behind a family thrust into the throes of uncertainty and public scrutiny. The immediate aftermath of his imprisonment was a blur of hushed conversations, tear-streaked faces, and the ominous silence that settled over our home. Julia, once a beacon of warmth and stability, transformed overnight. It was as if the sentencing had flipped a switch, revealing a side of her I had never known. Her affection, once freely given, became a scarce commodity, replaced by a cold detachment that left me reeling. I became the unintended recipient of her frustrations, a living reminder of the life that had crumbled around us. The household chores, once shared tasks, fell solely on my shoulders, a constant grueling reminder of how drastically our lives had changed. It was in these moments of isolation and relentless labor that I began to question the familial bonds that were supposed to sustain us through such trials. The transformation of my stepmom, once a figure of warmth and security in my life, into someone I barely recognized, was as swift as it was shocking. In the wake of my dad's imprisonment, our household, once filled with laughter and occasional arguments about trivial things like what to watch on TV or who would do the dishes, had morphed into a battleground of silence and tension. My stepmom's demeanor underwent a drastic change. Where she used to greet me with a smile in the mornings, now there was barely a nod or a grunt of acknowledgement as we crossed paths in the dimly lit hallways of our home. Before the new man came into our lives, my stepmom tried to sweeten the impending change with words dipped in honey, promising me that things would get better and that this man would bring a sense of normalcy back into our lives. She painted a picture of a future where we could all move past the shadow cast by my father's sentence, attempting to mask the bitterness of betrayal with false hope and promises. Yet, her visits to my father in prison were sporadic at best, and when she did go, It seemed more a performance for the benefit of onlookers than a genuine act of concern for the man she had married. On one such visit, when I attempted to breach the subject of her new companion, she cut me off sharply, her eyes darting around as if afraid someone might overhear the truth behind the facade she presented. Life as I knew it began to unravel the moment my father's sentence was handed down. The absence of his presence in our home was like a void that grew with each passing day, a constant reminder of the stability we once had but lost. However, nothing prepared me for the shift that occurred when my stepmom decided it was time to introduce someone new into our already fragile existence. Mark extended his hand, not in a gesture of greeting but rather as if he was bestowing an honor upon me by acknowledging my existence. "So, this is the little F word you were talking about," were the first words he chose to speak, his voice dripping with disdain. The smile on my stepmom's face faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered, laughing it off as though it was the most natural thing in the world to insult her stepson upon first meeting. I stood there, taken aback, not by the insult, but by the realization that this was the man my stepmom had brought into our lives, into our home, with the expectation that I would accept him. My height, which towered over his by a few inches, seemed to be the only shield I had against the diminutive nature of his character. As he walked past me to survey the house, his eyes scanned each room with a covetousness that made my skin crawl. I followed him, curious yet cautious, until he stopped abruptly, turning to face me. "You got a problem?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "No," I replied, my voice steady despite the rapid beating of my heart. "Do you need help finding something?" That's when it happened. Faster than I could react, Mark reached out, grabbing my arm and twisting it behind my back in a painful grip. The shock of the sudden assault rendered me momentarily helpless, but survival instincts kicked in. With all the strength I could muster, I kicked backward, hitting him on the leg. His grip loosened just enough for me to break free, and with one more push, he stumbled backward, falling to the ground. The sound of the fall seemed to echo through the house, and within seconds, my stepmom was by our side. But instead of concern, her eyes blazed with fury directed not at Mark, but at me. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she screamed, grabbing me by the arm and pulling me towards the door. I tried to explain, to tell her that Mark had attacked me first, but my words fell on deaf ears. With a strength fueled by anger, she threw me out of the house, her slaps and words following me out into the cold night. "After your dad got arrested, you became nothing more than a low-level bullshit that no one cares about," she yelled, the door slamming shut behind me, leaving me alone in the darkness. The slap from my stepmom echoed in my ears, a sound that marked the severing of whatever fragile bond we had left. My cheek stung, a physical manifestation of her betrayal and anger towards me. In a daze, I stood outside the door, my mind racing with confusion and hurt. I couldn't understand how things had escalated to this point, how the woman who had been a part of my life for so long could turn on me so quickly. I remember apologizing, my words a desperate attempt to mend the rapidly widening rift between us. "I didn't mean to," I began, but my apology was cut short by another slap, her hand striking my other cheek with a force that left me speechless. The door slammed shut, leaving me in a silence that was louder than any words could ever be. Standing there, in the cold dark night, I called out, hoping for a semblance of reason to pierce through the madness. The door opened, but it wasn't my stepmom who answered. It was him, Mark. The man who had ignited this firestorm with his mere presence. In his hands, he clutched some of my clothes, which he threw at my feet with a disdain that made my stomach churn. His words cut through the night, each one a knife twisting deeper into my already wounded heart. He cursed me, mocked me about becoming homeless, and called me the child of a criminal, saying no one would protect me now. His laughter, gloating and cruel, filled the air, urging me to hurry up and move on. "This house is mine," he declared, as if staking his claim on a territory that was never his to begin with. The humiliation of that moment was something I had never experienced before. It was one thing to be cast out by my stepmom, but to be ridiculed and belittled by a man who knew nothing of my life, my family, or the struggles we had faced, was a different kind of pain altogether. The words "no one will protect you" echoed in my head, a chilling reminder of the isolation I now faced. As I gathered my clothes from the ground, his laughter still ringing in my ears, a sense of resolve began to form within me. Yes, I was the child of a man who was now in prison, but that did not define me. My current circumstances, as dire as they seemed, would not be the end of my story. The cruelty of Mark's words and actions only served to strengthen my determination to prove him wrong, to show the world that I was more than the sum of my family's mistakes. I wrapped the clothes around me, a meager shield against the cold, and took a step away from the house that was no longer a home. With each step, I felt a mixture of fear and defiance. Fear of the unknown, of the challenges that lay ahead, but also defiance against those who would see me fail, who took pleasure in my suffering. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with obstacles and trials, but I knew I had to face them head on. I couldn't allow the words and actions of others to dictate my worth or my future. I was alone, yes, but I was also free. Free from the toxic environment that had sought to break me. Free to make my own choices and carve out my own path. As I walked, the laughter and curses faded into the background, replaced by a quiet determination. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here, in the shadow of a home that had turned its back on me. The journey would be difficult, but it was mine to make, and I would face it with all the strength I had. The cold bit into my skin, but it was the words, the betrayal, that chilled me to the bone. As I walked away from the house, the home that no longer felt like mine, I couldn't help but wonder how things had come to this. My stepmom, the woman who had been a part of my life for years, had chosen a stranger over me, had thrown me out into the night without a second thought. The walk to the police station was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions I couldn't fully comprehend. When I finally arrived, shivering and with the beginnings of frostbite nipping at my fingers, I was met with a kindness I hadn't expected. The officer at the desk listened as I recounted the events of the evening, his expression one of concern rather than judgment. He didn't question my actions, didn't blame me for defending myself. Instead, he took immediate steps to ensure my safety, offering me a place to stay until we could figure out what to do next. As I sat in the warmth of the police station, the events of the night replaying over and over in my mind, I couldn't help but feel a sense of isolation. My stepmom's actions had drawn a line, making it clear where her loyalties lay. The betrayal stung, leaving me with a myriad of emotions that I couldn't quite sort through. Anger, sadness, confusion, all swirled within me, creating a tumultuous storm that I had no idea how to navigate. The only thing I was certain of was that my life had taken a dark turn, one that I would have to face head on, regardless of the uncertainty that lay ahead. In the aftermath of that night, the reality of my situation began to settle in. My relationship with my stepmom, already strained by the loss of my father to the prison system, had fractured beyond repair. The home I had known, the life I had lived, had been irrevocably changed by the actions of a man I had just met and the woman who had chosen him over her own family. Determined to seek justice, I decided to take the matter to court. In the courtroom, the tension was palpable as the trial began. I sat in the back row, feeling a mix of anxiety and nervousness rising within me. Next to me was my lawyer, who had been my steadfast companion throughout the preparation for this trial. They had helped me gather evidence, plan our strategy, and understand my rights. The trial began as the judge entered, and everyone stood. After the judge sat down and the room settled, the prosecutor started presenting the case. They laid out the evidence of my stepmother and her boyfriend's abuse, including police reports, photos, and testimonies from me and witnesses. The prosecutor called me to the stand. Before stepping up, I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I recounted in detail what had happened, from being attacked by Mark to my stepmother throwing me out of the house and their hurtful words. Every story I told, every detail I remembered, brought both pain and determination to seek justice. My stepmother and her boyfriend's lawyer repeatedly questioned me, trying to undermine my testimony, but I was prepared and answered confidently. My lawyer had also prepared questions to clarify the events, helping me convey my story clearly and coherently. Next, the prosecutor called other witnesses, including neighbors who had seen the abuse and the police officer who took me in that night. Their testimonies further supported my story, painting a clearer picture of the abuse for the judge and jury. Finally, it was the defense's turn. They tried to justify their actions and provide explanations to lessen their responsibility. However, the evidence was too clear and convincing, making their defense weak and unpersuasive. After all the presentations, the judge called for a recess to review the evidence and hear the jury's opinion. I waited, my anxiety and nervousness increasing. In my mind, images of my stepmother and Mark, their hurtful words and violent actions, kept replaying. Finally, the judge and jury returned to the courtroom. The judge announced that based on the evidence and testimonies, they had reached a decision. My stepmother and Mark were found guilty of child abuse and neglect. Their sentence was several years in prison, and I would be placed with a new family where I could find safety and stability. Hearing the verdict, I felt an indescribable sense of relief. Justice had finally been served. I knew that the road ahead would still be challenging, but I believed that I had taken the first step in reclaiming my rights and protecting myself. Leaving the courtroom, I saw my lawyer waiting. They smiled at me, a smile of encouragement and support. I knew that no matter how difficult life might be, I could overcome it and find hope in those willing to help and support me. I want to divorce my husband. But everyone keeps telling me I will die alone if I do so. My son is experiencing a psychological crisis because of the rumors about his father's affair. What is the best course of action? My name is Sarah, and I am a 37-year-old mother of 3 wonderful children, a 12-year-old son named Jack, a 9-year-old daughter named Mia, and the youngest Lily, who is just 4. My husband, Tom, is 40 years old. We have been married for 15 years, but our journey together began 5 years prior to our vows, making it a total of 2 decades side by side. Over the years, we built a life that, on the surface, seemed almost idyllic, filled with the usual ups and downs of family life but grounded in what I believed was a solid partnership. We met in college, drawn together by mutual interests and mutual friends. Tom was studying to be an engineer, and I was immersed in my psychology courses. We were young and ambitious, each with dreams that seemed to align perfectly with the others. After graduation we moved in together, and not long after, we decided to marry. It was a simple ceremony, but it was ours, and it felt like the beginning of a promising future. The early years of our marriage were busy and vibrant. We were both climbing our respective career ladders, Tom at an engineering firm and myself in a private counseling practice. Children soon followed, and with each addition, our home grew more lively and chaotic in the best way. Jack's birth brought a new kind of love into our lives, and with Mia and Lily, our family felt complete. Life settled into a comfortable routine. Mornings were a flurry of breakfasts hurriedly eaten, school bags packed in a rush, and quick kisses goodbye. Evenings were for family dinners, homework help, and the occasional movie night when we could all agree on what to watch. Tom and I were partners in the truest sense, sharing responsibilities and supporting each other's ambitions. Our family life had a dynamic that worked well for us. I have always been the primary earner in our household, thanks to a successful career in private practice that flourished over the years. This provided us with comfort and stability. Although Tom's financial contributions were less substantial, they always felt equally important in the balance of our shared life. He was a devoted father, and until this incident, I had believed him to be a dedicated husband as well. But not all was as perfect as it seemed. About a year ago, I began to notice changes in Tom that I initially dismissed as stress from work or the usual ebb and flow of marriage. He became more guarded with his phone, his schedule grew increasingly erratic, and there were nights he seemed distant, lost in thought I could not reach. I asked if anything was wrong, but his answers were always the same: just tired, just busy. The day the truth about Tom's infidelity came to light started like any other. I had woken up early to prepare breakfast for the kids and get them ready for school. The morning rush had become a routine I could navigate almost mechanically, which probably explained why I first noticed the subtle changes in Tom's behavior. He was distracted, not his usual self, who would playfully help pack lunches or tease Mia about her perpetually mismatched socks. That particular morning, Tom had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. Normally, I respected his privacy, as he did mine, but a message flashed across the screen just as I was cleaning up. It was from someone named Jen S., and it read, "Can't wait for tonight." My heart skipped a beat. Confusion and curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself doing something I had never thought I would do. I picked up his phone and opened the message. The conversation thread was a gut punch. There were plans for dinner, exchanges of "I miss you" and "can't wait to see you," all interwoven with heart and kiss emojis. The playful intimacy of their words was starkly absent from our recent exchanges. I scrolled through weeks of deceit, each message a hammer striking at the foundation of our marriage. Feeling like a stranger in my own kitchen, I set the phone down and tried to steady my breathing. I felt betrayed, foolish, and unbearably hurt. Tom came down, dressed for work, and I saw him in a different light, no longer the man I trusted implicitly but a stranger who had brought deception into our home. I confronted him immediately, my voice trembling as I asked him about Jen S. He froze, his face draining of color. His initial reaction was to stammer, to claim it was nothing, but as I described the messages I had read, his shoulders slumped, and he confessed. The Jen S. was Jennifer Stone, our daughter Mia's teacher. The affair had been going on for months. The air between us felt charged with a cold electricity. Words flew between us, his apologies and pleas mingling with my tears and accusations. I demanded to know why, but his explanations, stale lines about feeling disconnected and lost, offered no real comfort or understanding. Our once warm kitchen felt like a bleak, hollow space. The impact of his betrayal was immediate and overwhelming. I was consumed by a torrent of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief. The man I had built a life with, had children with, had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. And not just me, but our family, our children. I couldn't stay in the same house as Tom that day. I needed space to think and to breathe, to escape the oppressive atmosphere of betrayal. I dropped the kids off at school, barely holding myself together long enough to see them into their classrooms. Then, instead of heading to work, I drove aimlessly, ending up at a local park where I sat on a bench overlooking a duck pond, A place that had once been a sanctuary for family outings. Sitting there, I felt the weight of the reality that my marriage was possibly over. Yet there was also a fierce determination brewing within me. I knew I couldn't let this go. I couldn't just play the role of the forgiving spouse, brushing the affair under the rug as if it were just a minor hiccup in our marriage. This was a breach of trust that cut deep, and it demanded action. After hours of sitting alone, I made a decision that felt like the only viable one. I would confront Jennifer Stone. This wasn't just about facing the woman who was involved with my husband. It was about reclaiming some sense of control over the chaos that was suddenly my life. It was about protecting my family, my children, and my own self-respect. After ensuring the kids were at school, and making sure Mia was in a different class for the day, I went to see Jennifer. I found her in her classroom before the school day began, the room bright with children's artwork and the promise of lessons yet to be learned. Jennifer looked surprised to see me, a polite smile fading from her face as she noticed the seriousness of my expression. I closed the door behind me, my heart pounding in my chest. The confrontation was direct and tense. I asked her if she knew that Tom was married, that he had children who looked up to her as a teacher. Her apology was quiet and seemed sincere, but it did little to quench the fire of my anger. I told her that I would be reporting the affair to the school board. It was not a decision driven by revenge, but by a need to see some form of accountability. I left her classroom feeling shaky but empowered, having taken the first steps in reshaping my life and my children's future. As I drove home, my phone buzzed continuously, lighting up with incoming calls that I stubbornly ignored. The screen showed Tom's name again and again, each call a reminder of the chasm that had opened up between us. I couldn't bring myself to answer, not yet. My thoughts were still raw, my emotions a tangled mess of hurt and indignation. Each ring felt like an intrusion, an insistence to listen to excuses I wasn't ready to hear. When the ringing finally ceased, the silence was quickly filled with the ping of incoming texts. I glanced at the screen. Tom's words appeared desperate on the digital display. "I'm sorry," one read, followed swiftly by, "I will break up with her, I promise. Just give me a chance." The messages piled up, each more pleading than the last. He promised disengagement, swore it was over. "You know how much you and the kids mean to me." Now, as I drove, his words churned through my mind. Was this plea for forgiveness rooted in a genuine realization of his mistake, or was it motivated by the fear of losing the comfortable life we had built? I pondered his sincerity, weighed against the practical aspects of our life together. Could a man who feared the loss of a lifestyle be trusted not to stray again if the opportunity presented itself under less dire circumstances? Yet as I pulled into our driveway and killed the engine, the tranquility of our home from the outside belied the turmoil I felt within. Walking through the front door, I was greeted by the quiet of an empty house. The kids were still at school, and Tom was likely dreading this inevitable confrontation somewhere else. The stillness gave me room to think, to really consider my next steps. Sitting down at the kitchen table where so many family meals had been shared, I laid my keys and phone in front of me. Tom's texts continued to light up the screen intermittently, each message a thread attempting to sew up the tear in our relationship. I thought about what it would mean to give Tom another chance. Could trust genuinely be rebuilt from such a betrayal? Was I willing to invest more years in a relationship that might never regain its former strength? These were not questions that could be answered in the heat of emotion. They required reflection and, possibly, professional guidance. Yet more than the betrayal itself, it was the manner of discovery that stung sharply. If I hadn't seen those messages, would Tom have continued the affair, content in his duplicity? The thought was chilling and brought with it a wave of loneliness, an isolation that stemmed not from being alone physically, but from realizing the emotional gulf that had developed between us without my noticing. Feeling utterly empty and overwhelmed, I picked up the phone and dialed my best friend, whose advice I always valued in times of crisis. As soon as she answered, my resolve crumbled, and I found myself sobbing into the phone, unable to fully articulate the deep sense of betrayal I felt. She listened patiently, her voice a steady calm in the storm of my emotions. After I managed to explain everything, she insisted that divorce was the only viable option. However, she also suggested that I should talk to my mother before making any decisions, considering her experience with a similar situation. Despite her advice, I hesitated to call my mother directly. I wasn't ready to hear her voice, worried it might carry either an "I told you so" or undue sympathy, neither of which I felt prepared to handle. Instead, I turned to an online community where I had an anonymous account, hoping to gain some perspective from people who had faced similar dilemmas. I laid out my story in a post, asking for guidance and support from those who had navigated the treacherous waters of infidelity and divorce. The responses began to trickle in, and as I read through them, a sinking feeling took over. Many comments were disheartening, and some echoed societal cliches that I had hoped to avoid. One might think, I will be a single mother. A single mother with 3 children has difficulty finding a new partner. We have luggage. Besides, I'm already 37. Some might conclude, I should just let him cheat because in the end he still provides and pays the bills. Considerations about the children are common. Think about your children and how it will affect them. Divorce is always harsh for children. Each comment felt like a jab, questioning my self-worth and the legitimacy of my feelings. Was I being selfish? I pondered deeply about my children's futures. What would happen to them without their father's constant presence? Would my decision to divorce scar them emotionally, or make them feel abandoned? The weight of these considerations bore down on me as I tried to separate the societal expectations from my own needs and the well-being of my children. The thought that kept returning to me was whether staying in a loveless marriage just for the sake of appearance or financial stability was genuinely better for the kids. Could I teach them about respect and self-worth, if I didn't uphold those principles myself? After hours of internal debate, I decided it was time to speak with my mother. I needed her perspective as someone who had walked this path before, someone who knew firsthand the pain and repercussions of such a decision. As I dialed my mother's number, the heaviness in my chest made each ring seem to echo louder. When she answered, her voice was a soothing balm, but it did little to ease the knot of anxiety lodged deep within me. "Mom," I began, my voice betraying the chaos of emotions I felt swirling inside me. "I need your advice." There was a pause as I gathered my thoughts, then I poured out everything. I told her about discovering Tom's affair, the confrontation with him and Jennifer Stone, and the unbearable hurt and betrayal that followed. I tried to steady my voice, but the pain laced through every word. My mother listened in silence on the other end of the line. There were no interruptions, just the quiet understanding of someone who has walked a painfully similar path. When I finished, there was a heavy pause, a moment filled with shared sorrow, stretching across the miles between us. Finally she spoke, her voice low and tinged with a sadness that spoke of old deep wounds. "Sarah, I know how you feel," she began, her words slow and deliberate. "You know I went through this with your father. When he cheated I felt my world had ended. I made the decision to leave him, and he never forgave me for it. He left us, and I was alone with you until you were grown." Her story wasn't new to me. But hearing it in this moment, framed by my own shattered marriage, gave it a different weight. "Sometimes I wish I hadn't divorced him," she continued, her voice cracking slightly. "He was angry, felt betrayed that I wouldn't try to work things out. Maybe if I had, you'd still have a dad who was present, not just a memory." The weight of her regret settled over me like a shroud. I had always known the narrative of their split from her perspective, but now I found myself wondering about the myriad of what-ifs that haunted her decisions. He left because he couldn't handle the rejection, not just of his affair, but of his hope for reconciliation. I stayed single for so long because I was scared, Sarah. I didn't want to bring someone new into our lives who might hurt us more, or worse, hurt you. You have a daughter, and you are my daughter. I didn't get married because I didn't want what men would do to my daughter. I wanted to protect you. Maybe sometimes too much." Her admission was a knife twisting in my already wounded heart. Protection, fear of further betrayal, and the loneliness of single parenthood were themes that resonated too well with me now. It made me question the path I had started down with such conviction. "Think about it, sweetheart," she urged softly. "Consider all the sides. I know it's hard. I know you're hurt. But you have your children to think about. Whatever you decide, make sure it's a decision you can live with in the long term. Don't rush into anything driven by hurt." Her words echoed in my mind long after we said our goodbyes. I sat alone, the silence of the house enveloping me, allowing me to stew in my thoughts. Mom's experiences served as a cautionary tale, but also a poignant reminder of the complexities involved in such deeply personal decisions. Tom's betrayal had cut me deeply, undermining not just our marriage but my understanding of our entire life together. Yet my mother's words haunted me. The possibility of regret, of making a decision too hastily in a moment of pain that could have long-reaching consequences not just for me, but for my children. Could I live with the same regrets my mother carried? Was I strong enough to handle the challenges of single parenthood without becoming bitter or overly protective as she had? These questions churned in my mind as I considered the reality of my situation. My children were still so young, so impressionable. What would this do to them? Jack, Mia, and Lily were my world. Their well-being had to come first, but how to best ensure it was a puzzle, with pieces that didn't seem to fit together anymore. The thought of tearing their lives apart by removing their father from our home broke my heart, but so did the idea of them growing up in a home devoid of genuine love and trust between their parents. As the days passed, these thoughts were never far from my mind. I watched the children play, their laughter bittersweet to my ears, a stark contrast to the silence between Tom and me. We were like ghosts in the same house, awkward and polite, but the warmth we once shared had cooled into something formal and strained. The need for a decision pressed on me, each day heavier than the last. I thought about counseling, wondering if it could possibly mend what had been broken. Could a therapist help us find a way back to each other, or at least to a place where we could co-parent effectively and without resentment? Or was the gap between us now too wide, the hurt too deep? These thoughts were my constant companions, haunting the quiet moments of my days and the long, sleepless nights. What was best for the kids? What was best for me? Could those two answers ever align again in the wake of Tom's betrayal? However, living with Tom while we sorted out our separation was a daily struggle. Every look, every accidental touch was a painful reminder of the betrayal. I couldn't stand being near him. His presence in our home, once a source of comfort and joy, now felt suffocating. I recoiled instinctively the last time he reached out, his hand brushing mine as he passed the salt at dinner. I snatched my hand back as if burned. The simple gesture was laden with the weight of his infidelity, rendering him a stranger in the eyes of the woman who had loved him deeply. Living under the same roof in such tension was like navigating a minefield. We were civil, mostly for the kids' sake, but the atmosphere was thick with unspoken words and stifled emotions. It became clear that cohabiting was temporary, a necessary arrangement until we could figure out the logistics of our separation. However, the issue of abandonment was something I couldn't easily shake off. Having experienced the pain of my father leaving after my parents' divorce, I was acutely aware of the scars it could leave on a child. I feared repeating history, worried about how my children would cope with the breakdown of our family unit. Would they understand why I had to make this decision? Would they resent me, or worse, think that all relationships were doomed to fail? The idea of living as roommates was briefly considered. It seemed a practical solution on the surface, maintaining a stable home environment for the kids while leading separate lives. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was not feasible. The emotional toll it would take on all of us would be too great. Our home would become a facade, a place where we played roles rather than lived our lives. I didn't want that for my children. They deserved a home filled with genuine affection and respect, not silent battles and forced interactions. The decision to proceed with the divorce was reinforced by these reflections. I knew it wouldn't be easy. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, from logistical nightmares to emotional upheavals. But I also knew it was the right thing to do. I needed to show my children that it was okay to stand up for oneself, that self-respect was crucial, and that happiness could sometimes require hard choices. Update. Living in the same house while preparing for divorce proceedings was like threading a needle with shaky hands. We maintained a facade of normalcy for the sake of our children, who were still blissfully unaware of the seismic shifts beneath the surface of our family life. This delicate balance was further complicated when I had to undergo LASIK surgery. The procedure meant I couldn't strain my eyes with activities like watching movies or reading for 48 to 72 hours, and even everyday tasks became challenging due to the need to avoid dust and pressure on my eyes. In the days following my surgery, Tom took on a role that I hadn't seen him fill in years, if ever so fully. He managed the household chores, from dusting to cooking and laundry. He was attentive, gently reminding me to take my eye drops and checking in to make sure I was comfortable. For a brief moment, it felt like the old days, when our partnership seemed solid and loving. I found myself wondering if this was the man I had fallen in love with, who had somehow re-emerged amidst our current turmoil. However, these thoughts were fleeting. I couldn't help but remember that this level of care and cooperation was uncharacteristic for Tom, especially in recent years. When I had been bedridden with the flu last winter, he had hardly lifted a finger unless prompted, and loudly at that. His sudden change of behavior seemed conveniently timed, almost as if he was performing the acts of a devoted husband to sway my decision on the divorce. It was difficult not to view his efforts as strategically aimed at winning favor, rather than genuine acts of love or repentance. The kindness he showed post-surgery did little to erase the vivid memories of the betrayal. The messages I had read between him and his affair partner still haunted me. The intimacy and affection they shared, documented in those texts, were a stark contrast to the utilitarian exchanges that had become the norm between us. 2 days of him playing the role of caretaker couldn't compensate for the months of deception and the emotional scars it left. With these thoughts heavy on my mind, I decided it was time to have a candid conversation with Tom. Wearing my new glasses, which somehow made me feel more shielded and composed, I sat him down and explained that my decision to divorce was unchanged. I reassured him that I wasn't planning to sever his relationship with our children. He would always be their father, but he could no longer be my husband. I suggested that we attend family counseling, not to rebuild our marriage but to ensure we could co-parent effectively and provide a stable environment for our kids. During our discussion, Tom's demeanor was somber. He apologized profusely for his actions and for the first time, opened up about the affair in a way that wasn't just excuses. He admitted that he saw the affair as an escape from our routine of life, not realizing the full impact of what he was risking, our family, our trust, and even the professional life of the woman he was involved with. He told me he had ended the affair and cut off all contact with her, acknowledging the destruction he had caused. Tom also expressed a dramatic resolve, claiming he would never date again. I cautioned him against making such sweeping declarations. Promises now, no matter how earnest, felt like mere words after the trust between us had been so thoroughly broken. The ordeal of dealing with my husband's infidelity has been heart-wrenching, not just for me but distressingly so for our children. The ripple effects of this betrayal have touched every part of our lives, perhaps none more painful than the lives of our 3 children, Jack, Mia, and Lily. Another problem we are facing now is our kids. Jack, our eldest, has been the most affected. At 12, he's at that age where he understands far more than one would wish for a child his age. The news of his father's affair has not only shaken the foundations of his family but seems to have shattered his view of his dad. Recently, I found out that rumors of the affair had circulated at his school. It's a small community, news travels fast, and at times, cruelly. This exposure has only added to his hurt and confusion. His reaction has been to retreat into silence, particularly around his father. Jack has taken to refusing meals prepared by Tom. Just last week Tom made spaghetti, a family favorite, and tried to lighten the mood with a joke about his famous secret sauce. Jack didn't laugh. He didn't even acknowledge his father. Instead, he pushed his plate away and made himself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The following days, he stuck to this diet, adamantly preparing his own meals. Mia and Lily, not fully understanding the situation but feeling the lead of their older brother, soon joined him. It's been peanut butter and jelly for days now. The impact on Tom has been profound. I've caught him crying quietly in the garage after these mealtime rejections. It breaks my heart. Despite everything, Tom loves his children deeply. He may have failed as a husband, but he has always been a dedicated father. He coaches Jack's soccer team, he's been there for every ballet recital Mia reluctantly participated in, and he's the first to get up at night when Lily cries out from a bad dream. I understand the children's reactions. They feel betrayed by their father's actions, which have disrupted the only world they've ever known. But at the same time, I don't want them to lose their father, to wrap their young hearts in bitterness. This is a crucial moment, and how we handle it could affect their ability to trust and form relationships for the rest of their lives. I've thought about reaching out for professional help. Perhaps a family counselor could provide the tools we need to navigate this painful period. Jack, in particular, might benefit from talking to someone who could offer him a neutral ear and wise guidance. Tom and I have discussed this, even in the midst of our own tumultuous feelings. We agree that regardless of the future of our marriage, we need to be co-parents first. Our priority is, and must always be, the well-being of our children. We are considering starting with some family therapy sessions. Though Tom and I are in the midst of a divorce, we need to find a way to work together to help our children adjust to this new reality. This is not just about getting through the day-to-day anymore. It's about laying a foundation for our children that shows them that even in times of deep hurt and betrayal, there can be healing, there can be forgiveness, not necessarily for the sake of reconciliation between the parted spouses, but for the ongoing relationship between a father and his children, and indeed, for the children's future selves. To anyone who might read this and has gone through similar struggles, any advice on how to handle these situations, especially with children of varying ages, would be deeply appreciated. How do you maintain the delicate balance between acknowledging their feelings of betrayal while also fostering forgiveness, not for the sake of the parent who wronged, but for their own future emotional health? This is the question that occupies my thoughts day and night as we try to piece together a new kind of normal.
Arrogant boss fires expert, leading to £800K project disaster. Sweet revenge unfolds, but the story ends in tragedy. Who am I? Do you know? It backfires on an egotistical manager when a $800,000 project goes off course because he sacked an invaluable staff member. First of all, this never happened to me. I was with the individual when they got a call concerning this problem. Then he walked me through it all. He is not on Reddit, hence I am sharing it. It is valuable. Every name has been modified to guard corporate and personal identities. The plot depends much on listed structures. There is a mechanism in place in the UK for maintaining historic and significant constructions. A building deemed historically significant is referred to as a listed building. The guidelines for its evolution, preservation, and enhancement are rather rigorous. I have to be obscure about the labor involved. Else, it would be too simple to name the people engaged. David, a buddy of mine, is quite specialized in a very small field of building. Using a very ancient building technique not used for several millennia, he fixes and renovates buildings. His whole output focuses on listed buildings and conservation projects. Work needed on a Grade 1 listed property. ACC Limited, the major contractor, was handling the building generally. There is quite specific study on one aspect. The architect provided a list of suitable candidates as the contractor management knew no one who had done it. The contractors selected my friend since he was most available early on. 5 days into the project, the major contractor, ACC Limited, arrived on site. David's words? He was a boisterous gobshite throwing his weight about. David ignored him while he was merely working. One of his carpenters was directed by the boisterous gobshite to make him coffee. The carpenter vanished. The noisy gobshite kept prowling and grumbling about delays costing him a lot of money. The boisterous gobshite asked my pal a question 15 minutes after the carpenter vanished. "Where's that chippy with my coffee?" asked a noisy gobshite. Chippy = carpenter. Chippy = carpenter. David, I'm not clear. Go and find out, a noisy gobshite says. David, I'm only here for this job, gesturing at the walls. I work for ACC Limited, not for you. Noisy gobshite. It makes no difference if you're an employee or a subcontractor. You still are working for me. Now go and locate my coffee. David. First of all, I find it offensive to be spoken to like manners. Second, my contract with you is to do these walls, nothing else. I most definitely am not a gopher. Noisy gobshite. Oh, do you not value being spoken to in such a manner? For which subcontractor do you now work? David. None. I run my business alone, just me. Noisy gobshite. A day laborer. And you have the guts to address me in such a manner? Do you know my name? David. Sure. Well, you're fired. A noisy gobshite says. Get out of the premises right away. David says, okay. Just get off the site, says a noisy gobshite. David grabbed out his phone and started recording. David. Okay, I'll leave. Just want evidence you advised me to leave. Grabbing David's hand containing the phone, a noisy gobshite yelled into the phone, "Get off the site, you idiot," a noisy gobshite says. You're let off. I'll have you thrown out if you're still here in 10 minutes. David. Cool, not problematic. He took up his gear and left. The contractor's site manager passed him, ironically with a coffee for the boss, as he was leaving and smiled. Site manager. Dave, you're leaving early? Bloody part-time kidding. David, no, your boss just sacked me. We have signed out our contract. Apologies, friend. The site manager said, No. Allow me to arrange things here. Please wait, kindly. David left the site. Knowing something the boisterous gobshite lacked, the site manager was losing his head. In the UK, just 7 persons are certified to handle the task. Every one of them had a waiting list. David had been the only one accessible. 12 missed calls by the time he arrived home. That was Thursday, 2 working days absent so far. He claimed he would go back only if he was paid for the extra days and personally apologized to the employer. I met my friend as he was answering a call from the site manager, stating the boss apologies but is out of the country, so cannot apologize personally. David also informed me he warned the other specialist over the phone, but they had all been contacted on Friday asking to be assigned work. Nobody picked up the work. They were all booked full. To warn him, David also called the architect. Under such circumstances, some dishonest builders attempt to falsify the work and bodge the job. David is going to keep his guns, money for all missing days plus a face-to-face apologies. He is positive he will grasp it. I mentioned I would pay anything to see the in-person apologies. Update 1. The site manager called to inform David he was advised by the noisy gobshite to threaten legal action should David fail to complete his work. The site manager became really ashamed and apologetic. David reminded him he left and had documentation proving he was let go. The site manager called once more to inform the noisy gobshite will be personally apologizing on Friday. Could David begin tomorrow? David said no. Following the legal action threat, the criteria are different. Before work starts, a face-to-face apology. Additional compensation for lost days. Paying the whole contract value up front before work starts. All of this has to happen on Thursday. He can start today and still expect to finish before his next reservation. Should he work weekends as well, he has just enough time. I questioned him about why he isn't charging the man who is such a wanker a hefty extra fee. He remarked, "It's not the done thing to take advantage of businesses under time constraints. It looks bad." One of my pals apparently is a guy from the 18th century. Edit. When David mentioned just 7 others do this work, I misinterpreted him. He intended 7 different companies distinct from his own. Since they are small companies, he argues it is most likely just about 20 persons capable of doing it. Still a limited amount, although not as humorally tiny as 7. I apologize for misled all of you regarding the count. Update 2. Sadly, an apology appears unlikely. David has found that the site manager was sacked for not alerting the noisy gobshite of the circumstances earlier. David told the operations director for ACC Limited, the second noisy gobshite, that he would not be returning to the position, so an apology is not needed. Apologizing for everything, the operations director promised to very liberally renegotiate the money. David informed him he had only thought about returning to the position as a personal courtesy to the original site manager. He feels no need to go back as he is not there. The operations director indicated he will contact David but omitted any explanation. Why he didn't say, "Give him his job back," or "I won't come back," I wondered. David remarked the boisterous gobshite is too weak and petty to be guided by a craftsman. It will have to be the concept of the company for the site manager returning. They won't bring him back if I order them to. David thinks it's difficult to obtain a job at 61 since the site manager is excellent at his work but only 4 years from retirement. I have decided that David appeals to me even more than 3 days before. 3 updates. It is 2 in the morning here. We just came out of the bar. David answered a call from the dismissed site manager while we were out. David reported the circumstances to the architect this afternoon. The architect got in touch with the terminated site manager to let him know about a company needing a site manager. Just before 9 p.m., the dismissed site manager called David. I had to sit through the one-sided phone call. I had to have looked like I had a house full of sparrows, childishly thrilled. Then David filled in for me. The site manager rang to thank him and find out his preferred drink so he might bring him a bottle. He is seeing them on Friday even though he does not yet have the new job. The architect is hopeful since apparently his advice has some weight. David first rejected. David, I didn't not get you a job. The architect done. Site manager. But you told the architect I had been sacked because of you, therefore you set all this in motion. I never have to deal with that annoying pillock ever once again. David left no clear identification for the irritable pillock. We will have to conjecture. David mentioned his drink is Cardhu Gold Reserve. He declared he would only take a bottle if A. the site manager lands the new position. B. should the site manager visit and sip the Cardhu with David. The whiskey consumption does not seem to include the attractive scribe who painstakingly and time-consumingly skillfully recorded this narrative down on Reddit. David elegantly said, "Piss off, knobhead, you can get your own drink." Except that nobody gets to see the tosspot noisy gobshite eat crow when he has to apologize. All excellent news ideally. I had great anticipation about that. David and the sacked site manager know each other outside of the office. Though 2 separate clubs, they are members of charitable organizations in the same location and cooperate extensively. David is Roundtable, whereas the site manager belongs to the Rotary Club. Though you never know, I doubt he is a knight. David was contacted by the operations director of ACC Limited to propose that they kindly renegotiate the money by bringing the site manager back. They have missed the boat, David says. He cannot finish the work on his own before beginning his next employment. Should all go without a hitch, there is an absolute minimum of 11 days labor left. David's next employment begins on November 4th. Assuming he works weekends, there are 10 days left. Last minute. I wish I could be a fly on the wall when the noisy gobshite is informed. Many people often ask, what does David do? If I said what it was, it would be quite identifying. I could as well tell you his actual name and address. Apologize. There are extremely few of them since it takes 5 years to become just competent and at least 9 years to be a master artisan. At least one master present is needed for the jobs done. Update 4, bad news. The site manager who was sacked did not land the other position. He met the new company, but they are not extending an invitation to him. The explanations are not obvious. David is seeing him Sunday to go over it. Though David is not at blame, I can sense he feels guilty about it. The site manager claims he will act regarding unjust firing. Though I imagine this would be a win-win-win, I suppose life isn't like that. News about the sacked site manager. The current state of affairs is not as dire as first assumed. We misinterpreted what transpired on Friday. David chatted with him yesterday. That aspect is accurate. The employer he visited on Friday is not hiring him in the usual manner. On a distribution center build, they have, however, presented him with a fixed-term contract spanning 18 months. Though not ideal, on the plus side it pays somewhat more than ACC. Though just 18 months, it is better than nothing. Should another project surface, the new business also has the option to extend the contract. David has heard that someone Bulgarian is visiting to cover for the work. David was grinning when he informed me. He believes he understands exactly what will happen. Some 19th century Sophian structures feature a comparable but different method that was used. David believes the man will apply such an approach. Though two extremely crucial elements are different, it looks comparable. David has opted to hold off. David is going to advise the client and the planning department to verify the two components. He intends to allow the Bulgarian to finish the job and get paid. The Bulgarian will have used the incorrect tools unless he is familiar with the English approach from the 17th century. It would mean pulling it apart and beginning over. They treat this kind of work quite rigorously. Though I hardly desire this, I truly hope this comes true. I'm a minor dude. More info. Many people are wondering when David would find out whether the Bulgarian performed the work as expected. Given that there are few vendors of one of the materials, David might know really quickly. Should the Bulgarian get in touch, David will be informed. David said, "It's a tiny incestuous part of the industry, and they gossip like old women." Correction. Like older women, we all gossip. David is leaving it alone till told the work is done and the Bulgarian is paid if he does not visit there. He wants not to jeopardize the man's money. David said, "I don't want the Bulgarian to drag his arse over here and go home empty-handed just because I can't wait to drop silly bollocks. The man has a living to support him. I'm going to wait. Silly bollocks is the same person as noisy gobshite just in case of uncertainty. Unless he works weekends, the Bulgarian should finish his job in 3 weeks. David will know when the work is done as he knows several people at ACC head office and several on site. I must thus wait on my hands for 3 to 4 weeks and appear to be a non-excited 7-year-old girl not complaining about Christmas approaching." Update 5. According to David, the Bulgarian got right to it and began working. Materials have been delivered, but from an ordinary building supplier. Though they sell it in Bulgaria, the items he requires for the work are too heavy for him to carry with him. He hasn't asked for it from the UK provider. 3, but only one has enough for this work since David brought it in for her. He is therefore not using the correct materials unless he is arriving by road and ferry. Though he was not bothered by raucous gobshite, David would not let it go unrecorded. He is a purist in terms of historical accuracy and truly enjoys maintaining all the structures he works on. I therefore have to hold my water for 3 to 4 weeks. David claims he might finish earlier if he uses more contemporary materials. If you stay in the 17th century, 3 weeks is the period. About this work, I have become such a weirdo. David knew I was after information after I phoned him earlier under cover of pretext. "Do you want me to fit a body cam so you can watch and hear everything as it happens?" David asked me. I answered, "That would be great if it would not be too much trouble and you could link me into your phone calls." Laughing, David said, "You knob cheese, is it okay if I cover the lens when I'm shagging my wife?" Personal Ollie, I don't do those two things at the same time, but whatever floats your boat, I said. David, you are telling me you do them separately. Me? Right after she washed all the garbage off the sheets after doing you. A few of us are finicky. David said, "Piss off, you're an uptight clean freak." Hangs. Not farewell, not see you shortly. English behavior is not what it once was. Though I realize it doesn't look like it, really I do have a life. I never would have thought I would be typing Update 6 when I originally started working on this. Update 6 Many news stories. 2 weeks ago the Bulgarian completed his work and returned home. Those who met Stefan the Bulgarian said he was a decent man and a really diligent worker. He worked weekends and 12-hour days to help to offset the expenses of living in the UK. David is glad he waited until Stefan paid before he reported the work, knowing what he discovered about Stefan. David already felt rather certain Stefan was not performing as required. None of the 3 companies he checked, the sole UK suppliers of the most unusual substance involved in the job, said they had an order for the site. Stefan might have imported it, of course, but nobody on site had seen an international material order. As scheduled, David thus made calls to the client, the architect, the local authority planning department, and Historic England. He waited for them to investigate after outlining his worries in the simplest, least invasive manner possible. Though it just took a few days, I can really say that I have never been that nervous or committed in anything unrelated to my pissing business. The architect produced the first report on incorrect materials and technique applied. Not the English one demanded, he had applied a Bulgarian technique from the 19th century rather than the 17th. The architect was really agitated. David Avid stated this phone call was blue, but he had never heard the architect using foul words before. The architect apparently termed the boisterous gobshite, ignorant cockwomble. David defined a womble for me. I knew nothing. Approach is welcome. Not wanting people to believe this was anything to do with him, the architect said he was going to get in touch with the local authorities. Most of the remainder came to David's second or third hand. He knows some of the staff from ACC. I wanted to know whether it was challenging to get them to tell him anything. He mentioned they lacked the quick adequate phone pickup ability. The location was visited and the work examined by the local government planning officials. They informed the contractor that the work had to be cleared and corrected since it was totally improper. Then it became fascinating. Looking about the property, the inspectors discovered a problem. It would be too simple to pinpoint the buildings involved, hence I cannot be exact about this. The builder had wrecked some of the structure. Though it was not very significant, there was an internal feature included into the roof construction. Although they were not let to, they removed it and replaced it with a far superior modern support. The project manager, the new site manager, or staff member neither understood the significance. Who ordered it to be replaced with a cheap, quick alternative rather than the slow, expensive, rebuilt option? Of course, it was noisy gobshite. Destroying anything on this kind of property is illegal, jail sentence type of crime. It's a huge fine even if they avoid jail. Everyone in that company is thus pointing fingers at one another and claiming no accountability right now. According to Noisy Gobshite, he did not direct the internal roof structural components to be removed. The project manager has email proving he did. The client asked all of the contractor's employees off the site on Tuesday, the 19th. They are currently looking over everything. They're most definitely firing the contractor. They have written guidelines for bids from fresh contractors. They will also sue the contractor for the expenses of undoing and fixing all they have done improperly. The architect's projection came at £800,000. The local government planning department wrote to the contractor detailing their mistakes and alerting them of their intentions for inspection and the likelihood of prosecution. On the day the letter arrived, Noisy Gobshite vanished to the lawyers, claims the staff. Within an hour, David received 3 calls from 3 separate ACC phones as word of the letter spread around the workforce. Now we are awaiting a few things. 1. The client's checkup. Should that prove ACC has damaged the site, the client is entitled to terminate the contractor. ACC has a huge repair debt and does not get paid. 2. Local authority inspections conducted by conservationists. Should they have destroyed elements of the property, the local government will punish ACC as a company and the individual responsible. David is rather disappointed since it is impossible to rebuild the internal framework lost. That was sitting there performing its job for 400 years until that gist stain enters the picture, he said. It goes then, and that is it, never again. He comes across as really depressed. I'm guessing Noisy Gobshite is yearning he had his own coffee that day last month. Edit, the letter to ACC, not their actual name, did not threaten a prosecution. It simply made them aware of the intention of the planning department to send a professional to check the construction and, more especially, the changed area. Apparently, should prosecution take place, it takes eternity. My real apologies for misleading all of you. Like everyone else, I was overly eager to grab my pitchfork and start believing the worst. Wishful thinking mixed with Chinese whispers meant that the story was far more serious and advanced by the time it reached David. Though it's more likely to be in 6 months than in 6 days, Noisy Gobshite may well be prosecuted. Since I started, that represents the second correction. I promise to try to be a little more deliberate on next revisions. My error, not David's. David cautioned me that not everything that comes in your ears has to flow directly out of your tongue. You're very eager to feed the masses. Although they might believe you're currently farting rainbows, if you make a bollocks of the data, this won't last. Like always, he is correct. As uncomfortably customary. Information asked. A few have inquired about the fate of the sacked original site manager, but I wasn't sure until now. We met in the pub, David, the site manager, 2 others also. Subject to fidelity insurance checks, he most certainly has the new job. His starting date is February 9th. ACC paid him off in place of notice. Firing is done according to convention. They paid him just over 3.5 months' wages in one lump as his contract provided 3 months' notice and he was due 12 holiday/6/vacation days. He also gets to retain the car till March. I was shaking like a dog when he fired me, he added, but the wife reminded me that I could take my pension early and how much I hate that company, especially that dodgy pillage. I stopped worrying when the architect contacted me about the distribution center job. He started the new work on a somewhat better pay after landing it. The main drawback is that the employment is just guaranteed for 18 months. Although it's not certain, there's a great chance the organization will retain him following that if they have work. He first intended to bring Noisy Gobshite to an industrial tribunal for unjust dismissal. Now he won't, since he won't suffer financially. "Obviously, I'm glad I'm not losing money," he remarked, "but I was looking forward to beating that Watson in court." He is building a better sleigh and several reindeer with the additional time right now. Certainly, a sleigh. It's on the rear of a truck. Father Christmas is on the sleigh performing Christmas carols at window-rattling volume, gathering money for charity while his company strolls the area decked as elves and snowmen. I have oftentimes been pulled into it. He brought David the promised whiskey. David advised he shouldn't, but the site manager remarked, "Why, Yorkshire men keep their word, even to a shower of soft shandy-sipping southerners like Ulan. Besides, I'm not risking breaking this lucky streak." Even the alcohol came at half price. Simultaneously pointing at him, David and I said, "A real Yorkshireman." For the uninitiated, Yorkshire residents are known for two things: highly straightforward communication and financial restraint. We left the pub after ridiculing him for implying that I was a southerner and headed to the garage of the site manager so we could sip the whiskey and appreciate his sleigh building work. Would they send me some freebies if I told you all how great Cardhu Gold Reserve tastes? Born close to Carnarvon, Saeeglf, I'm Welsh and am sobbing and bith, hence you have most likely seen some awful grammar. I'm full of whiskey, so right now I'm debating. It is past my bedtime. 1 a.m. Bye for now. Update 7. I believe there might be some karmic justice en route. Interviews under control have been conducted with Noisy Gobshite. It indicates they are ready for the possibility rather than that they are absolutely suing him. They will also do so with the sacked site manager next week. They also followed the same process with the project manager. The site manager is sure he has nothing to concern about. He was sacked, hence the decision was taken to remove the pieces of roof support. He added he was sure the Noisy Gobshite would have sought to assign culpability to a site manager if he had been present at the time of the illegal modification. He said, "That cowardly slope-shouldered turd would have shot all over me to save his own skin." Fortunately, the project manager has evidence in the form of an email proving Noisy Gobshite ordered the task. Noisy Gobshite sought to convince him not to forward it on to the local authority planning department. He threatened him when that didn't work. That backfired when the project manager told the investigators that Noisy Gobshite instructed him to delete the email in addition to neglecting the risks. "My buddy, a lawyer, informs me that destroying evidence and meddling with a witness are crimes in of themselves. Noisy Gobshite will not stop excavating a deeper hole. If he gets away without facing legal repercussions, I will be really let down." He is nevertheless clearly in pain. The major story of the week? Noisy Gobshite has been let off. After learning from no less than 4 separate ACC workers, David announced it yesterday, Saturday. They eagerly wanted to tell him, he said. Then the discussion followed this pattern. Me, how is that feasible? How does the owner find himself let off? Did he stroll up to a mirror and declare, "You're as much use as Anne Frank's drum kit, you're fired"? David, nope. You know he inherited the company from his uncle and dad. Me, exactly. David said, you know his brother and cousin own a slice each. Me. Anyway. David? They fired him since their combined share is over 50%. Louise, the accounts manager, told me they are pissing their pants. As long as the money came in, they were content to leave Noisy Gobshites in charge, but today their golden goose seems very sick. Losing this contract and the fees and penalties scares them since it will close the company. They therefore ask the customer owner to bring ACC back to complete the deal. Part of that is persuading the building owner that Noisy Gobshite has nothing bearing on the business. Clearly, they are putting Noisy Gobshite beneath the bus. According to Louise, a Noisy Gobshite fired at him with screaming and violent threats. He required escort off the property. He has been phoning staff members, posing queries, and acts shocked when individuals refuse to assist him. Louise claims he truly wants to be loyal to him and thinks the staff like him. The man is in cloud cuckoo land, she declared. Me? He will be really offended. I wish I could have seen the face of Numpty as it was developing. David says, it's nothing that the scrot doesn't deserve. I promised the person who told me I wouldn't tell anyone yet, hence there is another, but I can't tell you about it. Me? You tease. What relevance does it have? David. It's significant. Transformational for the theme in life. Me? I wish I could tell you. It nearly gave me a hard-on. Me? Fing hell, it must be big if it can get that ugly appending to do anything except hang there like the last chicken in the shop. David. What a drama this is. She believes I should share with her this confidentially anything I learned. Given our marriage, she expects me to be able to tell her everything. I said it's not something I keep secret. Though I had hoped I would get, I appreciate you have integrity, dear husband. No. Mrs. here is enraged since she believes I'm a knobhead. Louise's employment title and name have been changed to defend the innocent. I don't want any of you holding your breath. It looks like it will be a few months before he can provide me with this fantastic news. The building owner, client has completed their inspection. 2 portions are unacceptable, the damaged section and the one David ought to have completed but Stefan did instead. They are rather unhappy. Usually, the local government believes it's the owner cutting corners when listed structures are harmed. In this instance though, the owner is an austere ancient institution committed to maintaining significant structures. They didn't enjoy having to establish they had nothing to do with the building's damage as they are not used to being accused of anything dubious. David stated it appears they have written off ACC since they have made a type of tendering request to multiple other firms specialized in conservation. Then he spewed a bunch of jargon I neither knew or recall. Me? They have asked a few firms to quote a price for the job in simple English. David says, that's a very simplified way of describing it, but I don't have the time or the crayons to explain it to you. Me? Okay, let us say they are requesting job-related prices. Condescending, hence I was anticipating this tale would develop to a crescendo with noisy gobshites suffering something terrible. But it's just sort of faded with a whimper while we wait to find out what legal action will be pursued. Real life moves slowly, quite inconveniently. January 21, 2020. Hi there, this is Mark's wife. The moron requested me to apologize to the internet for his silence. On January 7th he was injured in an automobile accident. Though he won't be online for a little, we are confident he will fully recover. I explained it's only Reddit, but he's a compulsive freak about not disappointing others. I thus assured them I will include Reddit in the list. Here I am, informing all the folks he doesn't know why he hasn't finished imparting something they most likely aren't reading anyhow. March 2nd, 2020. Hello Mark, once more his wife. Direct messages numbered more than 200. I appreciate all of your remarks as well as your wishing of him well. I have read them all to him. I'll address the 3 most often asked questions. Mark's situation changed what? A big lorry drove straight into the rear of him while he was still stationary in his automobile about to exit the freeway. Between that lorry and the lorry ahead of Mark, his automobile was destroyed. Among his multiple shattered bones are nose, left orbital and cheekbone, left radius and ulna, forearm, left hand, right tibia and fibula, lower leg, and 4 ribs, one of which pierced his left lung. His left eye's center vision is somewhat damaged, however we hope this is transient. He needs more surgery since he has some tendon damage in his right hand and has 112 stitches overall. Though he looks like a wreck, he might heal free from any serious damage. If it were me, I wouldn't cope, but for as long as I have known him, he has always been as hard as nails. I went to pieces when I initially arrived at the hospital and he was lying there covered in blood, cables and tubes and couldn't talk properly. In minutes, he had me giggling. He has always been really adept in knowing the appropriate response. Not being able to use his hands is the thing most bothering him right now. When ought he to change the narrative? It might take some time. Though I could ask the guy David contacted for an update, I most certainly cannot tell a narrative like Mark can. I'm obviously biased, but Mark seems to be the most entertaining man I have ever met. I start to laugh so much I cannot breathe as he and David get going. I have advised him to temporarily forget about everything but getting well. If it starts to disturb him though, I've told him I'll do some secretary role-playing and he may write the narrative to me. He will finish it. He always finishes what he starts on. I wish my self-discipline was 100th that of his. A few have inquired whether they might give him money, cards, or gifts to cover missed income or medical expenditures. Thank you so much for offering, but it's not necessary. As we live in the UK, fortunately healthcare is free. He wants none of anyone's money. There is a long-standing charity we have sponsored called Macmillan Cancer Support if anyone feels driven to do something. At last update, knowing who I am would help you. The David against boisterous gobshite narrative. The 22nd of May 2020. Slough mainly grunted, this username belonged to Mark, my spouse. He penned the narrative on his friend David and a company owner he referred to as noisy gobshite. Up until he was in a January vehicle accident, Mark had been updating the narrative. He requested me then to let everyone know he was hurt and to update the narrative after he recovered. Mark sadly died barely over a week after my previous comment. Everyone thought he was healing, but he passed out and died extremely rapidly without warning. Although the team did all they could to save him, his aorta had burst. They claimed it is not unusual in auto collisions and had most likely been damaged during the accident. Although I'm sorry I didn't update this earlier, to be honest I totally neglected this page. I discovered how many people were waiting for Mark to wrap up the narrative only after I returned to go over Mark's words once more. Though I'm not sure how many people will view this update, would you kindly forward this news to everyone you know who was waiting for Mark to respond? Many thanks. I appreciate the hundreds of people that posted get well notes for Mark. I'm sorry I ignored you all for so long. But for the past 3 months I've been bewildered. Mark would have chastised me and most certainly objected to my leaving everyone in uncertainty. Many thanks to the persons who sent Macmillan cancer support money. Though it seems odd to have money given in the name of mostly Grunald. At last, I want to thank the moderators, especially /u/Marari01, for guiding me and outlining how I might notify everyone. Monday, May 24, 2020. For the wonderful messages and virtual hugs I have seen over the past day, I am most grateful. For hours I have shed tears. One finds it difficult to define what good sobbing is when one loses someone. Those who have lost a loved one will most likely relate. Most of today has been good tears thanks to your postings and comments. Your thoughts have helped me to consider all of Mark's amazing traits and all the reasons I so much loved him. I began working on the update, then gave up around 8 times before mustering some fortitude. I am rather happy I did it. I appreciate once more the final small push I required from the moderator, /u/Marari01. It also helps me understand that I wish to undertake one more activity Mark would have liked. He consistently brought his starting work to completion. I will find out what has happened by talking to his buddies. I'll try to get myself current with everyone's outcomes. I know some of it already. I tell you ahead of time, it will be merely the facts, not like Mark's writing. Though I lack Mark's natural storytelling ability, the comments clearly indicate that many people were hoping for a resolution. The bare facts will have to be sufficient, please forgive. I'm going to talk to David, the guy he contacted. This year he has been a total rock for me. With luck, he will be able to cover all. As soon as I can, I'll input the change. I greatly appreciate it all. You are unaware of the extent this has benefited. Friday, May 25, 2020. Mostly because to what you all wrote, yesterday I had a better day. I woke up today enraged and cannot seem to calm myself. England observes a public holiday today, and I find myself wondering what we would be doing if Mark were here. He never threw a holiday away. I'm furious since, just because some self-serving moron couldn't wait to respond to a text message, I have lost the best person I have ever known in my life. I find the stupidity and unfairness intolerable. He will spend a few years behind bars. Not one thing though, will bring my Mark back. Sorry folks. I simply needed to let out a vent. Please, kindly, avoid using your phone while driving. Also, avoid tolerating it if you notice others doing it. March 6, 2020. I want to highlight 2 points. Firstly, let me thank everyone for their comments. The lovely things you have spoken about Mark have cheered me. It took so long to tell you Mark had died since I never imagined they would. Still, you did help, even though what you said was so poignant that I broke down hundreds of times reading the great words. Second, I'm sorry for not yet answering every comment. On some days I feel I could talk about Mark all day. On others, I cannot even think of him without going to pieces. If I haven't replied to your particular comment, it's not as though I haven't read all of them. Simply said, I can't respond as I have been in a poor state portion of the time. Eventually, I will answer to everyone, much as I did very slowly with the cards during his funeral. It looked like I was climbing a mountain that wouldn't stop expanding, but I finally answered all 322 of them even though I didn't think I would get through them all. One of numerous decent habits I picked up from Mark is finishing what I start. I only want to hear him once more calling me Carrot. Carrot is a Welsh term for love. My name is not Welsh. July 27, 2020 at 3:10 a.m. Whoa, I hadn't been online for a few days and now hundreds of messages show up. I can't sleep once more, and it came to me that I could change what happened to every one of the characters Mark had penned. It's just the facts. It won't have Mark's style or humor, it's just basic knowledge. Still, it's the most I can accomplish and more than nothing. Starting in the new post on a building project for a distribution center, site manager followed plans exactly. Mark had already mentioned what David and the site manager were dissatisfied about. Though that was before the coronavirus, being on a fixed 18-month contract as a self-employed individual was a drawback when compared to being an employee. Most of the staff were let go after the virus struck. Some were furloughed. The contract required the corporation to maintain paying the site manager whole. What he considered to be a negative aspect turned out to be a saving agent. The last David could tell me about Noisy Gobshite was that he no longer owns a third as he had to sell his part of the company under pressure. Regarding his assets, he had to sign a personal liability agreement in case total obligations exceeded the company's worth. According to what I understand of it, Noisy Gobshite must pay the extra, even if it means he loses his house, if for example, the total bills for his mistakes are higher than the company can pay. They couldn't continue trading if he was participating, hence he had to give up his part of the company. He needs them to carry on paying the attorneys. Though he hasn't been charged with a crime yet, he most certainly will. Something to do with wanting to be ready to go to court once he is charged. They take their time researching and being ready before they charge him. It also came to light that he warned of similar, but somewhat more minor, damage to a listed property in 2011. According to David, some anomalies found by the local government during the inquiry were forwarded to HMRC, the taxman. Also under investigation for that scam is Noisy. One of the first remarks on Mark's post was expensive cup of coffee, an understatement if ever I've seen one. The major headlines would be on Noisy Gobshite and the sexual assault, rape, of one of the PAs in the ACC headquarters in 2017 as well as sexual harassment of other employees. Though it wasn't boisterous Gobshite, the sexual assault occurred. It was former finance director. Stories of sexual harassment of female employees have not evolved and proved to be mere gossip. David. Working on his own and without social distance problems, he's most likely one of the few persons who were not impacted by the COVID-19 epidemic both financially and practically. He has carried on rather as normal. Job is easier, he stated. The usual plonkers are not there to trip on my equipment or stick plank ends into my finished work. David is not doing personally very well. David took Mark's death worse than anyone else outside his family. He tries not to show me this. He is a rock when he is with me. He has kept me from falling. Among three persons, he is the one I feel I can truly let go concerning Mark, or so I thought. David's wife was really nice and empathetic when I spoke with her last week, but she had to tell me to hold back a little with David. Although his wife claims he is shattering, he seems strong to me. She says he has taken Mark's death extremely severely. I thought he and Mark were close friends. She claims that in all their marriage, she only saw him cry once, that of their dog's death. When his parents deceased, she missed him crying. She notes he seems lost now and has sobbed quite a few times. The worst thing to find out is that his crying period falls after his visit with me. I'm awful. He obviously was mourning, but I had no idea I was burdening him so much. I'm going to cease venting all my suffering and be more cautious utilizing him. I wish he had said sooner. Maybe I should have known about it instead of being so self-servingly preoccupied with my own loss. That is as far as I'm aware of the updates cover. They are ready to observe his charged with noise. Should he be found guilty of damaging classified buildings, he might find himself imprisoned. Should he be found guilty of fraud, he will almost surely be imprisoned. In either case, the fines will be 6 figures. David mentioned wondering whether he would like prison coffee. His sense of humor is dark. July 27, 2020, at 3:10 a.m., there were alerts for 512 private messages and comments when I first arrived online earlier. I have no idea where to start. If you have written, kindly please not assume I am not appreciative as I have not responded. I felt fit to write at 3:10 a.m., hence I updated. Right now I doubt I could accomplish it. I have been staring at our weddings video. Though I believed it might help, I feel like a bus has knocked me down. I was devastated by Mark's speech. He discussed our meeting and his return to the house he shared with fellow Royal Marines. One among them asked Mark, "What's the joke then? You're once more smiling about something. Come on, what's so funny here?" Mark claimed he couldn't and wouldn't explain it to them, he just couldn't stop smiling every time he considered our date. Every time he thought of me, he claimed, he felt that. It made me grin and started me to cry on our wedding day, but this morning it broke me. I believe the agony is growing worse rather than becoming less. It bothers me too. All through me I feel it. I can't stop it. All I can think of lately is wish I had been in the car with him if I cannot have him back. Being an atheist, he always advised, this is all you get, so don't dare waste any of it. Therefore he wouldn't approve of me harming myself. It's just so difficult to keep going with this suffering. I doubt I can. I simply want it stopped. I apologize for carrying on like way. I would convey this to those I know since they worry, but writing here is like shouting into a diary. I apologize to all of you. Though I try to control things, I miss him so much and I can't stop it hurting. What should I do is unknown. August 31st, 2020 is. Although I responded to hundreds of messages since last updating this post, I did not get through all of them. Though the screen says I still have 92 waiting. I cannot see or read any more of the messages in chat. Should you not obtain a response, you fall into the 92. Our anniversary yesterday, August 30th. Though I was looking forward it, when it came it was sort of empty. I cried when I viewed our wedding film. I replied to a few messages. Halfway through one message, I became abruptly overwhelmed with the knowledge that all the happiness I will ever experience in my life had already passed by. Every future endeavor I try will just be rewritten as Mark should be here, but he isn't. Everything from here till I die is simply life. Just breathing and watching the days pass. Without Mark, it seems quite meaningless. I'm not sure whether I could write ever more. I appreciate all of you volunteering your time. You're really beautiful folks. Clutch the people you love like you might lose tomorrow. Avoid doing what I did and believe you could live in your own little heavenly bubble always. In the blink of an eye, some lazy morons can destroy all you love, leaving nothing ahead of you. Bye. After my sister stole from me, my mother wants to defend her by sending me to military school. This took place when I was 14 years old, approximately 1 year before the divorce of my parents. My younger sister would always spend her allowance as if it were water, particularly on things like makeup, meals from the mall, video games, and clothing from Hot Topic that she purchased. In spite of the fact that I was also given an allowance, my father made me earn it by cleaning the house and working in the yard. My mother never forced my sister to do any duties, with the exception of cleaning her room, and my sister never did anything she didn't want to do unless her father was present to oversee her. In order to acquire additional funds, I mowed lawns, collected abandoned cans from various locations throughout the area in order to exchange them for a 5-cent deposit, and performed various other odd tasks across the neighborhood. I was putting money down at the time in order to get a scooter so that I could go around town. During the course of 2 years, I was able to save almost $2,000 by working a variety of odd jobs and putting away the majority of my allowance. The accumulation of that money, on the other hand, was not a simple task, primarily because of my sister. Despite the fact that she was aware of all the small hiding places where I used to keep my money, she would steal from them. The following is a memorable passage that I have paraphrased from what I remember. My response: "Hey sis, did you take my money again?" "Sister, what is it?" "No." When she was caught in the act of lying, she would stutter. "You are a terrible liar," I said to you. $100 is missing from my savings account. Sis is saying, "Leave me alone, I didn't do it." She begins to act as if she is crying and then rushes to her mother. Sis is saying, "Mommy, bro is picking on me." My response: "She stole from my savings again." "Shut up," my mother yelled at me while snapping her fingers. "Is it not obvious that mama's little girl is feeling upset? That is all there is to it? She said that she did not do it, so it is safe to assume that she did not do it. In that case, I'll put you on the ground if you don't let this go." The other person: "I know she did it, and if you don't get the money back, I'll get Dad's help." Mom: "There is no longer any requirement for that. Another thing is that you don't have any evidence that she stole your money." "Yes, I do," says I. "Every single dollar that I add to it is recorded in a ledger that I keep. A total of X was reached 3 days ago, however at this point, there is only Y. There is a missing $100, and you are aware that she has already stolen from my savings account on multiple occasions. That being said, I am aware that sis has already used up all of her stipend for this month, but you still went shopping yesterday. Exactly where did she obtain the money, don't you think?" Following a brief moment of reflection, Mom scowls. "What do you know, mister? You are firmly planted. I am going to grab the belt if you do not go to your room," she said. I had the ability to discuss the matter further. However, if there is one thing that I picked up from being in that environment, it was the knowledge of when to stop talking and simply call my father. Therefore, without uttering a single word to either of them, I made my way to my room and slammed the door shut. After that, I reached for my brick-like Nokia cell phone, which I had at the time, and dialed my father's number while he was at work. After he did not pick up the phone, I left a message in which I explained everything. He contacted me back about an hour later and assured me that he will take care of the situation. Not long after that, I heard the ringing of the landline phone in the house, and then I heard my mother yelling at my father as she was on the phone in the kitchen. It was difficult for me to listen from my room, and the only thing I managed to pick up on was my mother trying to excuse her behavior. When she was in the wrong, however, that strategy was never successful, and she ended up saying something along the lines of, "Fine. In the event that she did, in fact, steal the money, you're obligated to repay it because she has already spent it." On the other hand, my mother yelled at me while she threw open my door. "You little snitch, I can't believe you blew the whistle on me. You couldn't just let a little money slip through your fingers after everything I do for you." My response: "So you admit that my sister took it then?" A sneering mother says, "You know what? It makes no difference to me. More money is required by girls than by boys. There is no reason why you shouldn't just hand it over to her." Simply said, it wasn't even that much. "It wasn't just a little money, and you ought to know that," I said. In spite of the fact that she took $100, I would still want it back even if it was only $1. If someone stole from your purse, you would not want it to happen to you. The same thing would happen if my sister stole from me. She is guilty, as you are aware. One way or another, I want that money backdated. She did nothing while I put great effort on it. Mom. My darling has no responsibilities. She is a princess and ought to be treated accordingly. Me? That isn't what bothers me. She may go be a princess away from my possessions and away from me. Mom. That's it, you tiny expletive. I'm going to knock your ass. Me, standing up and staring her eye to eye, as I was already as tall as her at 14 and pretty strong from all the outdoor work I was doing. Go ahead and try it. Since I did nothing wrong, I won't let you. My mother froze in position for a second, then let out a loud "ray," and swung her arm to try and knock something off my dresser, but she swung too low and struck the dresser itself, which I assume truly hurt. She was giving me a terrible face as she grasped her hand to try and hold in the agony. Her teeth were snarling. She simply turned around then and left. When she didn't way was to go to her wine fridge and proceed to get drunk. I heard her making a racket, yelling and smashing the wall as she went down the hall, down the stairs, into the kitchen, doing her regular routine when she didn't way was denied. From her bedroom door, my sister was watching me. She glanced at me scared and ran back inside her room, slamming the door. Mom was fast changing. She was her ace in the hole for getting away with the horrors she did to me. My dad came home from work a few hours later and marched my sister into my room to see me. She admitted to pilfering from me, then informed me I was not grounded. Sis refused to even look at me the entire time she was being ordered to apologize, and she did so in the most quiet and squeaky voice at first, until my dad regularly told her to speak up till she was almost screaming it. Dad then handed me a $100 cash to cover what my sister stole and mentioned she was grounded for a week. The pilfered money will show up from her stipend. She began crying and called Dad horrible, then dashed to her room. Ignoring all of us, my mother merely sat on the rear patio intoxicated on her preferred wine. She never apologized to me and even behaved as though the whole incident never took place. My sister still received her next allowance as well, but at that time my mother gave it to her rather than my dad. On my dad's day off from work a few days later, we visited a nearby retailer where he purchased a combination safe to deposit my money and other little items in. We omitted telling my mother or sister I had it. It was set for a 4-digit code. To the best of memory, I used 4,962 back then. After locking the safe and emptying all of my money into it, I stored it at the rear of my closet. A few weeks passed, and one day after returning from mowing some neighbors, I discovered my room had been rifled. To let her know what sis did to my room, I gave my mother a call. Mom said, "My baby didn't do this." "Well then, did you?" I said. "Mom, no." "Me? Well, it could only have been one of you. No one else was here and this room was clean when I left." Mom clearly upset at getting caught by reason. "Fine, but if she did, then so what? You had it coming from not being kinder to her anyhow." She then turned to dash off. I phoned my dad once more and left another note explaining what transpired on his work answering machine. I then went to tell my sister I knew she was the one who tore apart my room. I said she couldn't get to my money anymore since I had locked it up in a safe before she could even try to respond to me. She then had an awful fit and naturally, nasty mama bear came running to save her. My sister kept wailing in her room for the next 20 minutes while I reiterated that sis couldn't get at my money anymore and returned to clean her room. Only thrown and spread around, nothing was truly missing or ruined. I gathered everything and restored it exactly how it was. Still, it was the most arrogant I had ever felt as I cleaned my room. The next day though, I discovered it ripped once more, and this time my window was damaged too. Not able to get the safe open, sis had thrown it out the window. I immediately contacted my father, and when my parents returned from work, my sister came clean about having done it, as if she were glad of herself. Saying I shouldn't have received the safe in the first place, my mother really tried to side with her. But, my dad chewed her up and stated he got it for me since he was sick and tired of her stealing from me. My dad has to pay me back each time she pilfers money from me and spends it since my mother never would. My dad got me a lock for my door and even a combination key lock box with the key to my room next to the door. We had to replace the complete window from my room. After shattering my window, My sister ground herself for a month and spent that whole time pining in her room. Mom always let Dad go back to do what she wanted, like watching TV or playing video games, whenever he was home till he left work. Knowing that my sister and mother would have gone out of their way to make me more miserable, I decided not to say anything. Once her month-long grounding ended, my sister started pestering me for money each time she spent all of her stipend. She never saved anything, hence I just pointed out to her that she would never pay it back. To be honest, I created an IOU to see whether she would really sign it before Dad. She ripped the paper in half later and went crying to Mom once more over my rudeness. Mom and she would try to make me cough up the money for her, but I would remind her what Dad would do. Thus, if my sister needed any more money, it wouldn't come from me. My mom then actively sought to send me to military school, but Dad objected. Also, for anyone wondering why my dad didn't simply assist me create a savings account back then, I honestly don't know. Saving it in cash seems like the way we handled things. Update. I once made my mother walk straight into my door. My sister had thrown my safe through my bedroom window, so shortly after my dad provided me a safe for my money, he also got me a deadbolt lock for my door with a wall-mounted lockbox requiring a code to access the key. Together, we installed the lock and lockbox while my sister and mother were not home. My sister came back and initially walked past my room. I watched her glance at the lock, then dashed to get Mom. Coming thundering down the stairs to meet my dad and me was both of them. What I recall is the following paraphrased. Mom says, pointing and snapping a few times, "What the hell is that?" Father. A door lock. Mom. I know what the expletive thing is. Why is it in there? Dad. Because you never see fit to reprimand or stop our daughter from taking from Kegel or ransking his room. The lock stays so going forward. Mom. This is my house and he is just 14. His door cannot have a lock. Dad said, no, this is our house. Last I checked though, I paid most of the expenses including the mortgage. You seldom pay anything, and I'm tired of you giving our daughter such preference that Kegel suffers constantly. Mom says, well then, I demand you tell me the code for the lockbox at least. Deadpan staring Dad. I'm not doing that because you've shown I can't trust you anymore. Mom then blasted her top and rushed down the steps. My sister merely stood there pouting and then made slow walk into her room. With the new lock, things were good. It became second nature to me to lock it each time I left my bedroom. Many times when I entered the code to obtain the key, I spotted my sister and mother staring at me, but I always made sure to conceal their line of sight using my hand or body. Though they hated that, there was nothing they could do about it. One day late in the month, my sister came begging me for $40 to get a video game she absolutely desired. Me. Why do you keep asking for money when you and I both know you'll never pay it back? Sis. I swear, I'll pay it back. Me. You won't? You know you would much prefer spend all of your allowance than pay me back. You spend everything you have then some each month. That's what you do always. Sis. No, I do not. Well then, how about we test that? I ask. Always have a witness for contracts, folks. I then went into my room, acquired a piece of paper and a pen, handwrote an IOU contract stating Sis would pay me back the $40 upon receiving her monthly stipend, and Dad would co-sign the IOU. After reading the paper, S began sniffling. She ripped it in half and then ran screaming to Mom once more, like she did every single time her way was denied. Mom. Sis, bowing. Sobbing. Mom. What is it, darling small prince? What then did Kegel do? Me. I asked her to sign an IOU fronting Dad as she wanted to borrow money. She then started to freckle. Mom. And why would you pursue that? She merely sought a small loan. Me. Would you sign the IOU also to make sure she pays the money back? Mom says, you little expletive. I am not required to sign anything, now only loan her the money. Me, not without a signed IOU. Mom stood up, arm out as if about to strike me, then pulled back. Mom. You have to have a paper trail for everything. You're just like your father. I love. I'd say it's a good thing I'm just like Dad because it's far better than being just like Sis is, because you never do anything good. Me, beginning to stroll up the stairs to my room at this point. Mom asked, what was that, you little expletive? Just as I entered my bedroom and locked the door, she started hurrying up the stairs. Back then, my mother used to yell at me by throwing open my bedroom door. She opened the in one sweeping stroke, lunging her body forward, but at this point I had only had the lock on my door for a brief while, so she wasn't used to it yet. She tried to throw open my door and smashed rather loudly directly into the deadbolt after I shut it. Then I heard her slump to the ground and begin to produce agonizing cries. She had very hard banged her body and face against the door. Her lip was plump and her forehead developed a bump from this old-fashioned solid wood door. She was spread out on the floor pounding her fists when I opened the door. Mom exclaimed, "You did this to me, you little expletive." "Me? You did it to yourself." "Mom, you are anchored. Get away from my sight." I then called Dad and he simply grumbled over the phone over the entire matter. He stated I wasn't grounded, but I was still in huge trouble for goading her and to let him handle her when he got home. That was about it. Dad gave me a harsh lecture at the end, coupled with extra housework and a cut in my stipend that month. Every time Sis begged for money following that day, I asked her to sign an IOU. She truly did object to that. Update 2. It blew up in her face when my mother tried to have me sent to military school and produced my dad's signature. When I stood up to my mother when she threatened to spank me, she seemed to get more cautious that if she tried to harm me it would end very poorly for her. The final time. She mainly yelled at me. She never laid a finger on me ever more until years later, when she wanted my house. I gave it no thought and carried on with my regular schedule of classes and odd work. Right around my 15th birthday, my dad gave me an engine kit for my bike to get around town. I would be better off saving for a car than a scooter, he advised, and this would help now. I stayed saving for a car and finally agreed with his reasoning. A few days later, though, I came over a military academy leaflet while clearing grass off the rear patio after mowing the yard. It was on the floor under a chair close to where my mother preferred to sit and sip wine. I waited until my dad arrived home to show him what I had discovered. I felt she was planning some sort of mad scheme. He went to see my mom with the booklet and asked her about it since he was somewhat irate but didn't jump to judgments. Dad said, "Honey, what's this?" Mom becomes white upon seeing the leaflet. "Nothing. I had never seen it before." "Dad, exactly? You know I wouldn't let you send Kegel to military school if you intended to try to send him." Mom broke her front at that and exclaimed, "He has to learn some discipline. He locks his door often, hence I am unable to even spank him anymore as he is too big. This is the only means I have left to chastise him for being a disobedient brat." "Dad. Kegel stood up to you for your silly favoritism and did nothing wrong. Given you in the way you treat her and let her get away with stealing from her brother, our daughter is the brat if anything. And as far as I'm concerned, this conversation about sending Kegel to military school is closed. Should you try to send him, then help me. I will bring the hammer down on you whatever method I can." Mom. "Well, I guess this entire family is just going to take away what little power I have left in this house then. Should I have nothing, I could as well be nothing." Dad. "You and I both know you would much choose Keel over being nothing. Cut back on your theatrical behavior. Now a guy with his own money, Kegel is growing up." Mom left the room angrily then. Before school, the next morning, I watched her desperately attempting to fit something into the kitchen garbage can. I dug out what she was trying to hide while waiting for her to head out for work. She filled out the military school application totally in her hand. On it, both parents or legal guardians had to sign. The paper included 2 signatures. I understood Mom's, but the other seemed to be a poor attempt to copy Dad's. His sleek and sophisticated signature was something he took great satisfaction in. There is no way my mother could replicate it without seeming like fraud. She probably understood it once she was confronted and gave up attempting to send me away. Later I showed my dad the papers and kept them. Though he was furious, he let it go knowing she had done it already. Still, he filed the paperwork right in case. A few more months later, word leaked out that my mother was seeing an old high school ex-boyfriend. My dad filed for divorce. That was his last straw. Months later, after he acquired another house, I moved in with him. Pulling out the military school records my mom had created with his signature, he accelerated the divorce rather fast. And it wasn't only that, he also had evidence she created his signature on at least one credit card application and one other thing I don't remember, which made Mom worry about being arrested for fraud. She agreed to most of his requirements, so they proceeded really quickly through court. Dad didn't want the house, so Mom bought it. Nevertheless, she also insisted on alimony and child support since my sister, predictably, decided to remain living with her. For a decade of monthly payments, the judge granted my mother child support and a minimal alimony award. Alimony essentially paid my sister's allowance anyhow. Mom was really irate about that and vowed to bring him back to court, but for years he held the falsified signatures over her head to calm her. My sister threw out her mouth at me and smugly claimed Mom informed her she was a princess and the more deserved sibling, so explaining the reason I was leaving the house. Not caring anymore, I merely shook my head and advised her to consider what she wants. Then I went out the door, at last as free as a bird. My connection with my sister, who paid once weekly visits to Dad's residence, deteriorated until at last we stopped communicating completely for years. Mom's residence hardly appealed to me. She essentially turned my former room into a home office anyway. My mom favored my sister and ignored me. In the end, my perfect sister ran off with Mom's money, leaving her devastated. I was 23 years old and lived at home with my mom, 52 years old, and older sister, 26 years old. This manner of life persisted after my dad's death 5 years ago. Emma, my sister, was Mom's favorite from the beginning. Anyone who spent even 5 minutes with our family could see this. It wasn't just me. When she was a kid, Emma was the center of attention and the recipient of all the newest fashions and technology. Even though Mom never missed an Emma school function, she would make up an excuse like, "I'm too tired," or "I have to work late," whenever I asked her to attend my own. Eventually, I grew accustomed to the pain. There was little change as we aged. While Emma attended a prominent university to get a law degree, I got my associate's degree in graphic design from a small college. Emma was the object of Mom's incessant boasting. "My Emma is going to be a big-shot lawyer one day," she would proudly proclaim. All the while, people either didn't care or were downright disappointed by my chosen work path. However, the true problem wasn't merely favoritism, it was the unequal allocation of domestic duties. I was supposed to handle all the housework since Emma was supposed to be studying. When I say all, I really do mean it. I would begin my day at 6 o'clock every morning. Making breakfast would be my first order of business. Emma favored a vegetable omelet accompanied by a serving of fruit, while Mom liked her eggs cooked to perfection with toast and no crust. In my regular state, I would hastily seize a granola bar for my own consumption. Before going out to my part-time job at a nearby coffee shop, I would tidy up the kitchen, wash the dishes and begin a load of laundry after breakfast. Despite Mom's lack of request, I worked there to help out around the house and save up for my own place. I would do everything from dusting to mopping, vacuuming, and everything in between as soon as I got home in the afternoon. Meal planning and grocery buying were also my responsibilities. This was never easy because both Mom and Emma had very specific nutritional needs. Even the dinner was a show. While Emma sat on the couch, fiddling with her phone, I would whip up extravagant dinners. Talking to her mom about her day, school, and future goals was a regular occurrence. Word of mouth would be an uphill battle for me. Guess who had to do the dishes after supper? I am, once again. Mom would give me a disapproving look and say things like, "Your sister needs to focus on her studies," whenever I ventured to complain or ask for assistance. One day, she will have a prosperous life and be able to provide for all of us. Assisting around the house would be the bare minimum you can do. Emotionally and physically, it was draining. While Emma was free to unwind and have fun, I felt like a housekeeper in my own house, rushing around all the time. Worst part was that Mom was completely unconcerned with my attempts. From that point on, it was Emma this, and Emma that. Things reached a boiling point on a certain day. I was hoping to reconnect with some college pals that day, because it was a Saturday. Our design class was going to have us work on a collaborative project. The opportunity to leave the house and engage in social interaction that did not include serving coffee or doing chores was more than enough to make me look forward to it all week, and not only because of the project. As is my habit, I got up bright and early to finish my errands before I left. My mom walked into the kitchen just as I was preparing breakfast. "Oh great, you're awake," she remarked. "Today, I'm counting on you to give the living room a good scrub. We need to scrub the carpet and remove and wash the curtains." My chest ached. "But Mom," I said, "today I am scheduled to..." "Remember when I told you about our group project?" Mom scowled. "You can reschedule, right? Do not overlook this. Next week we have company coming over, and I would like the house to be spotless." In an effort to maintain composure, I inhaled deeply. "We will have to reschedule. This has been in the works for weeks. Perhaps Emma could pitch in and clean a little." It was almost 10 in the morning when Emma, seemingly at a whim, strolled into the kitchen still dressed in her pajamas. "Morning," she said with a yawn as she reached for a muffin from the platter I had just placed. Turning to Emma, Mom's expression softened. "Hello there, darling. Had a good night's sleep? Rest assured, there will be an online study group meeting later on." With a muffin still in her mouth, Emma nodded. Mom redirected her gaze to me, her face becoming even more stern. "Your sister needs to get some serious schoolwork done. No one should expect her to clean. Her education is of the utmost importance to you." Something inside of me snapped. Every bit of pent-up resentment, animosity and pain finally burst forth. "And what about my education?" I spoke more loudly as I inquired. "What will happen to my plans? This is my life. Isn't their significance immense? Mom appeared surprised. To which she responded, "Of course they matter, but," I interrupted her. "But it's still not equal to Emma's, is it?" "Never on par with Emma's." Finally speaking up was Emma, who had been observing this discussion with wide eyes. "Stop including me in this, please. When Mom wants you to help out around the house, it's not my fault." I was already furious before that. "Although you have never once offered to lend a hand, please don't take this personally. Sit back and enjoy the ride." Mom made an effort to step in. "Now let's all calm down, there's no need to." Still, I was feeling very well at the moment. I was helpless as years of suppressed feelings finally broke out. "No more settling down for me, Mom. I've had enough of being the housekeeper. Treating me like Emma is beneath me and I'm sick of it. Everything, including the partiality and unreasonable expectations, has had enough of me." I looked across at Emma. "Why does Mom never ask you to help out with housework?" Her reasoning is that she believes you have great potential to become wealthy and provide for her in the years to come. It's quite the burden, isn't it? But well, at least I'm doing all the work, so you can relax. Redness spread across Emma's face. "You can't be fair. My education are a top priority for me." "And I don't?" My response was a rapid one. "In addition to schooling and taking care of the house, I'm working part-time. When will it be safe to think about the future?" Again, Mom attempted to intervene. "You are aware, my darling, that we value all that you do? The difference is that Emma's chosen profession will, in the end, pay off more handsomely." A slap in the face was the feeling I got from such remarks. "Is that all? Is the amount of money I could make in the future the only thing that matters to this family?" Mom swiftly reversed her course. "No, it is not my intention. Compared to what you're studying, a job in law offers more stability." "Coloring and design, Mom. One of my majors is graphic design. Is it so important that you've taken the time to research my life goals and aspirations?" I knew exactly what to do based on Mom's expression. She was unconcerned. Without ever truly comprehending it, she had dismissed my career path. I pushed back the tears that threatened to well up in my eyes. At this very moment, I would not weep. "What do you think? That's it. Today I will not be cleaning the living room. I intend to get down with my pals and get some stuff done on my project. Plus, I'm leaving the house until we have a serious talk about how things work here when I return." I then snatched my suitcase and bolted from the kitchen, leaving Mom and Emma standing there in disbelief. A strange feeling of relief mingled with fury and hurt as I banged the front door shut behind me. I had finally spoken out for myself after what felt like an eternity. The remainder of the day slipped my mind. In an effort to forget about the argument from earlier, I got together with my pals and dove headfirst into our project. The day progressed though, and uncertainties began to arise. Did I react too strongly? Had I been self-centered? Perhaps I should have simply rearranged my plans and cleaned up as Mom requested. Note, I got back to my house that night, emotionally and intellectually drained by the day's events, but still intent on keeping my word and having that serious talk. But the tension was palpable the moment I stepped through the door. When I walked into the living room, neither Mom nor Emma gave me a second look. With some hesitation, I spoke up and asked, "Hey, can we talk?" No sound. Both of them peered intently at the television, but it was clear that neither of them was paying attention. I gathered my courage, inhaled deeply, and chose to go ahead anyhow. "Listen, I get that you had a long morning, but I feel like we have to talk about this. Emma, all I'm asking is that you pitch in a bit more with the housework. I would feel more comfortable if we were treated fairly." Mom finally turned to look at me, her face showing no emotion. "I think you've said quite enough already," Emma interjected, her tone betraying her contempt. "Indeed, your voice was clearly audible to us earlier today. You're envious of my future prospects and me. How egocentric are you?" I was hit square in the stomach. Is it egocentric? Asking for aid isn't selfish in any way. Grandma scowled. "It's like you're breaking the silence in this house. Her education should be Emma's top priority. You're simply envious because you're aware that your small pastime won't be very successful." "Hobby?" I said it again, my jaw dropping. "Graphic design is a real career, Mom, if you'd ever bothered to learn about it." "Enough," Mom interrupted me. "I won't have you disrespecting us like this in our own home." Abashed, I remained still. It had been my sincere wish that they would have considered my words and come to terms with how unfair things had been. Nevertheless, they redoubled their efforts. "Our very own home," I murmured again. "I see. I suppose it's no longer my home." I retreated to my room after saying nothing further. I returned outside after stowing a few articles of clothing and necessities in a bag and retrieving my laptop. Mom and Emma continued to stare fixedly at me from the living room. "I'll be at Sarah's," I texted, mentioning my college best buddy. "I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later." Relieved and heartbroken all at once, I slammed the door behind me. Unfortunately, I needed some breathing room to figure out what to do next, so I resorted to this temporary measure. Unlike at Sarah's, I wouldn't be made to feel like an inferior or treated like a maid. I have no idea what the future holds, but I am certain that I'm entitled to better than this. I should begin to believe that now. Update. I must admit, leaving my family home has been an eye-opening experience. It has been approximately 3 months since I made the move. My friend Sarah has been my roommate, and we've been dividing up the rent and housework evenly. Everything I do on a daily basis has changed. Since I no longer have to worry about taking care of the house, I've had more time than ever before to devote to my education and my emerging profession as a graphic designer. I've interned at a regional marketing agency, finished a number of freelance jobs, and am now building my portfolio. When you're not worn out from being a maid for other people, you can do so much. However, unexpected events do happen in life. While grocery shopping last week, I unexpectedly ran into Mrs. Johnson, our neighbor. She looked worried and wanted to know how I was doing before she inquired about Mom. Evidently, she had observed Mom's recent struggles and apparent overwhelm while tending to the yard. According to Mrs. Johnson, "Your mother insisted she was fine, despite her offer of assistance." I was under the impression that Emma was assisting her. A wave of shame and anger washed over me. Obviously, Emma was making everything worse. Since when would she begin? The most shocking thing, though, wasn't even that. In her usual gossipy but well-intentioned manner, Mrs. Johnson spilled yet another bombshell. "And how is Emma's academic progress coming along? I pray that the incident involving Professor Andrews has not had a significant impact on her." Mrs. Johnson's eyes expanded, so I must have appeared perplexed. "Oh no, I guess you were aware. Professor Andrews and Emma have been spotted all over town together quite a bit. There has been discussion." Feeling disoriented, I thanked Mrs. Johnson and limped out of the store. My ideal sister Emma was careening around with a professor instead of concentrating on her promising legal career. The neighbors even took note and started chatting about it. So it must have been really major. I was unhappy most of the time, but there was a twisted satisfaction in there somehow. The golden child wasn't all that golden after all. It broke my heart to see Mom trying to get everything done that I used to do on her alone. Tragic for Emma, who put her career in jeopardy for a professor's romance. I felt terrible for our family since it appeared like everything was coming to a crumbling end without me. Given this data, I am unsure of my next steps. While a part of me longs to make amends and reach out, another part recalls the pain and years of inferiority and questions whether it's worthwhile. My personal development and recovery are my current priorities. Self-worth and my chosen profession are becoming more apparent to me. A life where my worth is recognized and my efforts are valued is something I'm working toward. Perhaps Mom and Emma will come to terms with what they've lost in due time. Perhaps they will not. I used to try so hard to win their favor, but now that I'm on my own, I recognize that it was a mistake. The circle of life always seems to close, doesn't it? When I finally felt like I had things under control 6 months later, life decided to throw me another curveball. My phone rang on a peaceful Sunday night while I worked on a freelancing assignment. "Yeah, Mom." Since my departure, we hadn't had many conversations, so I was hesitant to respond. My mother's inconsolable wailing greeted me when I took up the phone. "Mom, what's wrong?" My pulse pounding, I inquired. She choked out, "Emma's gone," as she sobbed. She took the most of my savings when she ran off with a boy from her university. The sensation was as if someone had doused me with icy water. Hearing that Emma had done something so careless and damaging was upsetting since, despite everything, she was still my sister. "I'm coming over," I announced, hastily retrieving my keys. My heart nearly burst at the sight of my childhood house when I arrived. Compared to the spotless home Mom had usually kept, the house was in utter disarray. Even though it had just been a few months, Mom appeared to have aged significantly. She started crying again the second she laid eyes on me. I couldn't make sense of the conflicting feelings coursing through me as I comforted her while she sobbed. Mom gave me a glance with crimson-rimmed eyes once she cooled down. "I've been so foolish," she whispered. "The last several months have really enlightened me. I was completely mistaken on a lot of things, including you and Emma." She grasped both of my hands. "Even though you were the reliable one who I could always rely on, I failed to recognize your worth and instead treated you like a commodity. My deepest apologies, my love." My own eyes started to brim up with tears. I never imagined I would get this kind of recognition, yet here it was. I want you, even though I know I don't deserve it, Mom went on to say. Are you thinking about returning home? Trust me when I say things are going to change. Looking at Mom, vulnerable and sincerely sorry, made me realize I couldn't turn my back on her, no matter how much I wanted to deny in order to shield myself from more harm. All right, Mom, I whispered. I'll come back, but things really do need to be different this time. A wave of relief swept over her as she enthusiastically nodded. They will be, I promise. Now I find myself back in my childhood home. It's weird, unsettling, yet somehow soothing all at once. My mother and I are working on improving our communication and mutual appreciation. My graphic design work has captured her attention, and she has even asked me to teach her the basics. Collaboratively, we are cleaning up the house and resolving the financial crisis that Emma caused. It's challenging, but we're making it work. We have not received any communication from Emma. She has my deepest sympathies, and I pray she is safe, but I can't shake the rage she inspired. Thanks to Mom's understanding, I'm able to keep up with my internship and freelancing job. Finding that sweet spot is going to take some time, but we're getting there. What is ahead is completely unknown to me. A part of me is still cautious, still trying to keep my emotions under check, but I also have hope. Perhaps this is the opportunity for a new beginning that our family has been seeking. For the time being, it suffices. It's not the happily ever after I had envisioned, but it is real. My parents tried to give my inheritance to their favorite daughter, but my grandparents had a surprising twist in store. Male 28-year-old comes from a family with a convoluted and long history of favoritism. My younger sister Amy, 25, has always been preferred by my parents, especially Dad, over me. Starting in our childhood, this partiality only got worse as we grew up. Amy was the golden child from my earliest memories. Our parents threw her an elaborate birthday party including professional face painters, a bouncy castle, and a petting zoo when I was 5 and she was 2. I had a store-bought cake and a little family supper for my birthday that same year. This helped to define the tone for years to come. The differences became clearer as we aged. Amy always received the newest toys, the greatest clothes and most attention. I recall saving months of allowance for a new bike when I was 10 years old. Amy wanted one too, hence she had a fit when she saw it. Rather of educating her about waiting or saving, my parents went right out and got her an even nicer bike than mine. Another arena where the bias was evident was school. Amy's parents attended all of her school functions, while they usually missed mine. I took front stage in the school play in 4th grade. I practiced for weeks, driven by great enthusiasm. My parents arrived an hour late on the night of the play, therefore missing my major scene. They were consoling Amy after she complained of stomachache. She was good later on, they had simply lost count of time playing with her. Regarding academics, nothing I ever appeared to do seemed sufficient. I joined the math club, often received straight A's in middle school, and even took first place in a regional science fair. Though my parents hardly noticed these successes, they gave Amy a celebratory dinner and purchased her a new phone as encouragement to keep getting better when she scored a B+ on one test in her weakest subject. In particular, high school was difficult. With an eye toward their approval, I put myself into whatever activity I could. Along with keeping a 4.0 GPA, I was editor of the school newspaper, debate team captain. Amy coasted through school, hardly keeping a C average, and spent much of her time hanging out with friends. I was chosen from our university as one of 2 junior year applicants to participate in a famous summer program at Harvard. It was such an honor, and I felt great. My dad grumbled and moved the topic to Amy's forthcoming dancing performance when I told the news over supper. At least my mother remarked, "That's nice," but she moved on fast. My parents couldn't bring me to the airport on the night Amy's concert fell on the same day I was leaving Harvard as they wanted to see Amy perform. I asked the parents of a friend for a ride. Another agonizing experience was the college application process. I worked months on improving my essays, engaged in extracurricular activities, and SAT preparation. Several elite colleges accepted me and I was given a sizable scholarship to my ideal college. When I told my parents about this at supper, their reaction was barely passable. "That's good, but don't let it run to your head. College isn't everything," my dad advised. "Just remember about us when you're off becoming a big shot," my mother said. On the other hand, my parents were quite understanding when Amy barely passed high school and chose not to attend college. They admired her for knowing herself and for defying social expectations. Something they never done for me, they even paid for her a car as a graduation gift. Emotionally, this persistent favoritism suffered me greatly. Over my teens and early 20s, I battled anxiety and despair. Beginning therapy in college, I came to realize that my parents' actions were not my fault. Years of effort were needed to develop my self-esteem and learn to validate myself rather than depending on my parents' approval. My immediate family did not help me, yet I still managed to lead a decent life. By the time I finished from college with honors, I had a decent job in finance, and even purchased my own house by 27 years old. Though my parents aren't, I'm glad of what I've accomplished. Here then, is where the current drama begins. On Dad's side, my grandfather died not too long ago. He left a sizable estate and was a successful businessman who started from nothing. In his will, he split his possessions equally among his grandchildren, including me, Amy, and our cousins, as well as his children, Dad and his siblings. My portion of the bequest was significant, roughly $500,000. It would have let me invest in my future, pay off my education loans, and perhaps even launch my own company someday. This unanticipated windfall and the chances it could present made me happy. When the will was read though, my parents clearly became agitated. Later, they drew me aside and said they felt it was unjust I received an equal portion. Amy, who lives in our parents' basement and works part-time at a coffee shop, said she needed the money more since she was suffering. Though stunned, I attempted to keep cool. I clarified that Grandpa made this decision. They had no say on how he decided. They insisted I should act morally and give Amy my fair part. They became enraged when I turned down and began guilt-tripping me, calling me unappreciative and selfish. Every incident my dad could recall where they had helped me came under discussion. Though I worked part-time to help with finances, he emphasized paying for my medically necessary braces, buying me school supplies, the bare minimum, and allowing me reside at home during college. He conveniently forgot about the car they bought Amy, the many shopping sprees, and the fact they still support her at 2025. The matter got rapidly more serious. Acting as the will's executor, my dad chose to handle things himself. Along with her own inheritance, he declared he would be interpretation Grandpa's intentions and give Amy my whole part. He said Grandpa would have wished if he had known our unique situation. I was broken. This was not only obviously illegal but also a terrible reminder of how little my parents thought of me. Pointing that Grandpa had always treated all his grandchildren equally and that he was aware of our circumstances, I tried to reason with them. Then my mother accused me of speaking ill of the deceased by implying Grandpa would have preferred anything else than what my dad was advocating. I mentioned certain memories of Grandpa pushing my academic and career goals, but my parents brushed off these as misinterpretation. They said Grandpa wanted to make sure Amy was taken care of and had privately voiced worry about her future. They had no response when I asked why he hadn't simply penned the will that way then. Amy, for her part, was awkward about the circumstances but did not voice criticism of our parents. She merely shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know best." When I tried to chat to her alone, she obviously wasn't going to be much help. Feeling misled and wounded, I asked Grandpa's widow, my paternal grandma, for guidance. Hearing what was happening, she became enraged. She informed me that my parents had no authority to alter the will and that this was exactly not what Grandpa had planned. Grandma sent some material that clarifies the matter. Several years ago, apparently, my parents asked Grandpa to give everything to Amy in his will. Grandpa had steadfastly objected, saying he thought all of his grandchildren should be treated equally. He had even included a stipulation in his will declaring that anyone challenging the equitable distribution would lose their portion. Equipped with this knowledge, I challenged my parents. Grandma's disclosure of their earlier attempt to affect the will startled them. Saying they were only looking out Amy's future helped my dad try to defend it, but I could see the guilt on their faces. Grandmother acted right away. She got in touch with her will's other executors and attorney. She also got in touch with my dad's siblings, who shared her equally strong indignation at what he was attempting. Taken together, they stopped my dad's scheme and guaranteed that the will would be carried out as stated. Though they are unhappy with me, my parents were obliged to back off. They argued I should have handled this in-house instead of involving others and accused me of turning the family against me. My mother sobbed over how I had split the family and deceived them. I said I had never expected anything from them anyway, when my dad threatened to cut me out of their will totally. Now, should I accept the inheritance, they are threatening to break off all communication. My dad even went so far as to suggest that I would not be welcome in their house should I inherit it. In a particularly low blow, my mother remarked that my acceptance of the money reveals that I never truly loved them and was merely ready to profit from their passing. The matter splits the extended family. A few of my cousins are encouraging since they understand the long-standing favoritism and value me for advocating myself. Others believe I should have yielded in order to preserve peace since family harmony comes first over financial considerations. Although my dad's siblings are definitely on my side, this has strained their relationship as well as my parents. Amy finds herself enmeshed in all this. She confided in me privately that although she feels bad and didn't ask for this, she is not ready to challenge our parents. She's been trained her whole life to depend on them and seek their praise, hence I don't blame her totally. Still, a part of me longs she would help me just once. This circumstance has brought out a lot of past suffering and bitterness. I find myself remembering all the times I was passed over or discounted in favor of Amy, the birthday celebrations I missed, the school functions my parents missed, the successes that went unreported. This one occurrence seems to be bringing to a head a lifetime of unfairness. Though the whole affair has caused a great divide in the family, I am keeping my ground and want to take my inheritance as Grandpa meant. My parents hardly talk to me, and family get-togethers have grown awkward. I missed our monthly family meal last week for the first time ever since I could stand the cold shoulders and accusing glares. Though there is turmoil, a tiny bit of me feels empowered. I'm confronting the unfair treatment by my parents for the first time in my life. I'm declaring my value and refuse to be written off. It's both terrible and freeing at once. Though I think I'm in the right here, the family drama is draining me. Something I hadn't experienced since college, I have started having anxiety attacks once more. To assist handle all this stress, I'm thinking about returning to therapy. Am I the one who should have refused to comply with my parents' expectations and accepted my inheritance? Should I have simply handed Amy the money to maintain peace? Although I'm bored of being the family scapegoat, I also fear losing my family totally. Any guidance or viewpoint would be much valued. Update. Since my first post 6 months ago, a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and guidance. It truly kept me strong during trying circumstances. Let me start with the legal aspect of things. Many of you advised, and I did see my own attorney. He verified that I had every right to inherit and that what my dad attempted was in fact illegal. He helped me record everything and ready to act legally should needed. Fortunately, things did not transpire as such. Along with my dad's siblings, my grandma and her attorney worked out matters without involving court. I got my whole fortune and the will was carried out exactly as intended. Because of his will manipulation attempts, my dad was removed as an executor. This was a somewhat demanding process spanning several weeks. My parents threatened litigation, there were tense meetings and furious phone calls, but ultimately the law was unambiguous and they had to back off. Still ongoing though, the family fallout has been noteworthy. At first, my parents doubled down on their viewpoint. They charged me with being avaricious and neglectful of my sister. They also sought to mobilize other family members against me, disseminating allegations that I had somehow coerced Grandpa into giving me money. Luckily, most of the family saw through their trickery. About 1 month following the will's acceptance, there was one really unpleasant occurrence at a family gathering. When my parents showed there unannounced, my aunt was hosting and hadn't asked them to come. They started a scene. Starting to shout about how I had taken from Amy and corrupted Grandma against her, my dad became saying I had ruined all these wonderful memories. My mother flung an old photo album squarely at my feet. It was awkward and terrible. It took several relatives to cool things down and persuade my parents to leave. Bless her heart, my grandmother turned out to be my most powerful supporter over all of this. She related tales of how my grandfather had always been pleased of my achievements and how he especially wanted to make sure all his grandchildren had equal chances. She even said Grandpa had maintained a scrapbook of my accomplishments, newspaper clippings of academic honors, copies of my college acceptance letters, and even the program from that university play my parents had been late for. This insight was sad as well as wonderful. Grandma also volunteered to straighten the records with the wider family. She organized a family gathering excluding my parents, laying out the entire history of my parents' partiality including events I had long forgotten or never ever heard about. Having someone at last recognize the unfairness I had gone through for years was vindicating, but it also reopened old scars. About my sister Amy, she at last found her voice in all this. She came to me personally and apologized for not sticking up for me earlier after some soul-searching and several long talks with our grandmother. She said she thought our parents' preference was improper, but she had been too terrified to confront it. We discussed our childhood and how it influenced both of us in great length and emotional intensity. Amy admitted that being the favorite child wasn't as wonderful as it seemed. She never learned how to stand on her 2 feet and felt great pressure to live up to our parents' expectations. She told tales of times she yearned to accomplish things on her own, but our parents would swoop in and handle everything for her, therefore depriving her of the opportunity to develop and learn from her mistakes. For our relationship, this talk marked a sea change. We began to mend the sibling link our parents' partiality had broken. Just the two of us have been routinely meeting for coffee to discuss and encourage one another through this family crisis. Declaring that she was going to pay for college with her inheritance astonished everyone. She claimed seeing me stand up for myself motivated her to start managing her own life. Once she decided what she wanted to study, she registered in a nearby community college, first intending to transfer to a 4-year university. Our parents let out startled gasps. They knew, I believe, that their babying had not done Amy any favors. The response of my parents to all this has been diverse and changing. They first attacked both of us angrily. They tried to guilt Amy into quitting college to help the family since they said I turned her against them. They changed strategy when that proved ineffective. After several protracted talks with my grandmother and seeing Amy's great transformation, my mother began to recognize how damaging their actions had been. She has made some hesitant moves toward reconciliation, even beginning therapy to address her problems. She got in touch to apologies, owning that she had been unfair and requesting a chance to right things. It's a slow process, and while I'm gently hopeful, I'm also keeping strong limits. Sadly, my dad has been less likely to own any mistakes. Still furious, he feels as though he is the victim in all this. He has been chilly toward Amy since she chose to go college and hardly speaks to me. He has tried a few times to control us, threatening to sell our childhood house should we fail to come to our senses or forgiving us should we realize we were wrong. Although we are both standing strong, it hurts to see him distance both of his children like this. The dynamics among the extended family have changed dramatically. I now live closer to my dad's siblings, who have been quite helpful, and my grandmother. Having heard from my aunts and uncles about handling my dad's challenging conduct over the years, it has lessened my loneliness in this fight. Deeper bonds with some of my cousins who stood by me have also developed. Starting a monthly cousin meal allows us to all catch up free from the drama of the older generations. For myself, I have been making sensible use of my inheritance. Having paid off my college loans, I now feel an amazing degree of financial freedom. Working with a financial advisor, I have assembled a varied investment portfolio. I have also set aside some funds to maybe launch my own company some years forward. Opening a community center with reasonably priced mental health treatments and financial literacy seminars is something I'm investigating. But for me, buying therapy for myself and volunteering to do the same for Amy has been the most significant application of the money. Both of us are learning to set reasonable limits with our parents and are working on healing from our childhood events. Though it's a long road, I already feel as though I'm developing in knowledge and ability to overcome emotional neglect and long-term partiality. This whole process has brought some surprising good improvements into my life. I now know a great deal about establishing limits and defending myself. Though I know I did the right thing, it hasn't been easy and there are still difficult days. I feel good about myself for resisting guilt and pressure. Among the most unexpected results has been a change in my work path. Dealing with all this family conflict and undergoing therapy has helped me to see my own passion about supporting people who, dealing with all this family dysfunction and doing therapy has helped me to see how driven I am about supporting others who have gone through same family dynamics. Currently thinking about returning to school to specialize in adult children of emotionally immature parents and work as a family therapist. I have also been helping youngsters from challenging family homes at a nearby youth facility. Being able to offer the kind of encouragement and support I wish I had had as a youngster is immensely satisfying. I'm even considering creating a scholarship fund for children from same circumstances using some of my inheritance. My contact with Amy has kept getting better. Once a month, we have a siblings day when we do something entertaining, just the two of us. Our hiking and picnic last month was the most laid back and connected we had felt since we were small children. Without our parents' influence, we are gently reconstructing our connection on our own terms. Regarding my parents, things remain tricky. Our relationship has been trying to be rebuilt by my mom. She has been routinely attending therapy and has even begun to see some of the damage her favoritism brought about. We have had a few one-on-one lunches when we have had some honest, though challenging talks regarding our past and forward direction. Though it's not flawless, improvement is evident. My dad still objects to change though. He still says he done nothing illegal and that Amy and I should be appreciative. He refuses to be in the same room with me, hence he missed several family functions. Though it hurts, I am trying to let go of my need to compel him to see things differently or control his reactions. For both Amy and me, Grandma now serves as a rock. She has been sharing additional tales about our grandfather and his pride of us for advocating for ourselves. She always supports justice and understanding, thus she has been a fantastic mediator in family problems. The whole process has imparted a lot of lessons about the actual meaning of family. I've come to see that occasionally the family you select might be more encouraging than the one you were raised in. Along with developing a close-knit circle of friends who have been quite helpful along this journey, I have grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me. Setting limits and practicing self-care have also become more crucial to me. I'm growing better at saying no to circumstances that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel bad about giving my personal well-being top priority. I was so preoccupied with trying to achieve my parents' favor that I had always put off investigating new interests and hobbies. To those in same circumstances, I would wish to advise not let someone make you feel bad about getting what is rightly yours. Even if it generates controversy, it's reasonable to defend yourself. Though family dynamics might be complex, you are deserving of fair treatment. Remember, you never have too late to begin developing the life you are due. See a therapist if necessary. Surround yourself with encouraging people. And don't hesitate to establish limits. Who you are personally defines your value, not how your family treats you. I want to thank each of you once more for your suggestions and encouragement. It meant more than what you would have known during a really trying period. Although the road has not been simple, I am excited about the future and confident in self-assurance I have not experienced in years. Where this new chapter of my life will lead excites me, and I am resolved to stop the pattern of favoritism and build better relationships in my own future family. Regarding my parents, things remain tricky. Our relationship has been trying to be rebuilt by my mom. She has been routinely attending therapy and has even begun to see some of the damage her favoritism brought about. We have had a few one-on-one lunches when we have had some honest, though challenging talks regarding our past and forward direction. Though it's not flawless, improvement is evident. My dad still objects to change though. He still says he done nothing illegal and that Amy and I should be appreciative. He refuses to be in the same room with me, hence he missed several family functions. Though it hurts, I am trying to let go of my need to compel him to see things differently or control his reactions. For both Amy and me, Grandma now serves as a rock. She has been sharing additional tales about our grandfather and his pride of us for advocating for ourselves. She always supports justice and understanding, thus she has been a fantastic mediator in family problems. The whole process has imparted a lot of lessons about the actual meaning of family. I've come to see that occasionally the family you select might be more encouraging than the one you were raised in. Along with developing a close-knit circle of friends who have been quite helpful along this journey, I have grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me. Setting limits and practicing self-care have also become more crucial to me. I'm growing better at saying no to circumstances that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel bad about giving my personal well-being top priority. I was so preoccupied with trying to achieve my parents' favor that I had always put off investigating new interests and hobbies. To those in same circumstances, I would wish to advise not let someone make you feel bad about getting what is rightly yours. Even if it generates controversy, it's reasonable to defend yourself. Though family dynamics might be complex, you are deserving of fair treatment. Remember, you never have too late to begin developing the life you are due. See a therapist if necessary. Surround yourself with encouraging people. And don't hesitate to establish limits. Who you are personally defines your value, not how your family treats you. I want to thank each of you once more for your suggestions and encouragement. It meant more than what you would have known during a really trying period. Although the road has not been simple, I am excited about the future and confident in self-assurance I have not experienced in years. Where this new chapter of my life will lead excites me, and I am resolved to stop the pattern of favoritism and build better relationships in my own future family.